Chapter 415. With Su Xianqian's shameless rumor, Jiang Wang couldn't escape awkwardness when facing Li Fengyao. Lindsay wasn't too far from days, but it wasn't close either. It would take some time on the road. Li Fengyao was beautiful, but she was cold and arrogant. It was inevitable that people didn't dare to get close to her. Now, he even learned that she had a hobby of beating people. Just listen. After being beaten 18 times, Su Xianqian, who wasn't afraid of anything, didn't dare to approach her. Putting himself in her shoes, would he be able to take a beating? Li Longchuan could only smile bitterly at Jiang Wang's reaction. I didn't know beforehand. My sister has always been in charge of her own affairs. I'll let my sister go first? Li Longchuan asked again. In the end, he didn't say the word scared in front of these people. It's okay. Jiang Wang waved his hand fearlessly. I'm not familiar with this place, so I'll have to trouble Miss Li to lead the way. Cheng Gengsheng secretly gave him a thumbs up. Yin Fu and Gao Zhe gave him a look of appreciation. Jiang Wang raised his cup and looked around proudly. Talking was talking, laughing was laughing. With Li Fengyao's inner mansion realm cultivation, she proposed to go to the Seven Stars Tower with Jiang Wang. She probably invited him for Li Longchuan's sake. As long as Jiang Wang wasn't arrogant, he couldn't refuse this kind offer. When will your sister leave? Jiang Wang asked. At this time, the servant of the Li residence whispered something in Li Longchuan's ear. The valiant Li Longchuan looked a little embarrassed. My sister's carriage is outside the tower. In such a hurry? Jiang Wang's eyelids twitched. The fat on Cheng Gengsheng's face trembled. Yin Fu and Gao Zhe kept their mouths shut, afraid that Li Fengyao would hear what they said. Su Xianqian's example. Right? If Li Fengyao was outside the tower, then did Su Xianqian slip away? These fair-weather friends didn't say anything, but their expressions all became lively. In that case, I'll leave now. Jiang Wang stood up, raised his cup, and drank it in one gulp. He had the momentum of a warrior who wouldn't return. It was a pity that he drank tea, so it was inevitable. Because Li Fengyao's carriage was just outside the door, everyone only raised their teacups to send him off. In short, although they were usually arrogant. However, not many people dare to stand in front of Li Fengyao immediately after talking about him behind his back. This tea house had a quiet and secluded environment, and its location was not easy to find. It was at the end of a deep alley, and only served acquaintances or friends brought by acquaintances. It was one of the businesses that Zhong Xiansheng had recently taken over. It was very suitable for a private gathering. Jiang Wang left alone. None of the people who were drinking tea with him saw him out. From Estlees, teas as they tea heard as all teas. Li Fengyao's carriage stopped at the entrance of the alley. The carriage was large and spacious. At first glance, it looked simple and elegant. The heritage of the Marquis's mansion was all in the small details. There was only one horse pulling the carriage, but it was very handsome. It was snow white without any impurities. Only its eyes were like black jade, extremely lively. A pretty maid stood beside the carriage. She gestured with her hand and said, "Young master, please get in." Putting aside her temperament, family background, and strength, the person sitting in the carriage was also a top beauty. It was impossible to say that he wasn't nervous. Jiang Wang nodded in return. His expression was still calm. The carriage's curtain was lifted. He only had to lean half his body to see Li Fengyao. He saw her sitting in the main seat. Her eyes were like snow, cold, proud, and beautiful. Even though it was the second time they met, he was still moved by her beauty. Well, greetings to Miss Li. Jiang Wang controlled his gaze and greeted politely. Li Fengyao blinked. Hello to you. Jiang Wang looked around and couldn't hide his uneasiness. Actually, I can sit outside. Puffed. The maid couldn't help but laugh. You'd better sit inside. I have to sit outside to drive the carriage. Jiang Wang said awkwardly, I can drive the carriage for you. The pretty maid smiled. She grew up in the Li family and was used to seeing all kinds of young masters and handsome young men. Most of them were in high spirits and had a romantic attitude. It was rare to see someone with a tender face. She looked at him and said, That won't do. If you do my work, what will I do? Besides, De Black is not close to strangers. The horse also looked back at him. Its eyes seemed to be disdainful. De Black should be its name. De Black was white. Umph. A horse driving a carriage. Jiang Wang snorted in his heart. Of course, he couldn't say anything else. Thus, he stepped onto the carriage, bent over and squeezed into the carriage. Then, he obediently sat down in the left corner. There were 5 seats in the carriage. Li Fengyao sat in the main seat with her back against the carriage wall and facing the door. There were 2 seats on each side, separated by a short table in the middle. Jiang Wang sat in the left corner, 1 seat away from Li Fengyao. There were some indentations on the short table. There were exquisite teapots and jade plates with pastries and fruits. At this time, Jiang Wang was able to observe the interior of the carriage. The overall style was generous and bright, showing that Li Fengyao's taste was different from that of ordinary girls. Hearing the sound of the wheels rolling, the carriage itself didn't feel the sway. It had already set off. Calm and peaceful, Jiang Wang thought to himself, amusing himself. Those guys who were waiting to watch a show must be disappointed. In the carriage that was moving smoothly, Li Fengyao's voice sounded, "There are tea and pastries. Please help yourself. Don't be shy." "Got it," Jiang Wang answered honestly, just like how Meng Sheng answered his teacher. After thinking, he added, "Thank you, Miss Li, for giving me a ride. We still have to attend the 7 Stars Tower together. If we always go with Miss Li and Prince Jiang, it will be too distant. What do you think?" Yes. Li Fengyao looked at Jiang Wang generously. He was facing the front and looking straight ahead, as if he was studying the texture of the material of the carriage. From this angle, only the side of his face could be seen. The bridge of his nose was high, and his lips were slightly pursed. His expression was a little uneasy, but there was also a rare, refreshing, and clean look. There was a faint smile in his eyes, and he said, "You, Long Chuan, and Xiang Qian are good friends. If you really don't know how to address me, just call me Sister Fengyao like them. I'll just call you Little Wang." "Oh, okay," Jiang Wang replied. The uneasiness in his heart had indeed dissipated a lot. However, there was also an indescribable sense of regret. Li Fengyao used the back of her index finger to gently tap the teacup and said, "Drink tea." Ding! Jiang Wang could feel that this sound was exquisitely controlled and spread far and wide. It sounded normal in the carriage, but for those who had condensed their Tao energy and were paying attention to this side, it was probably not so good. Jiang Wang vaguely heard a few screams. The voices were very familiar. He couldn't help but pick up the teacup and take a sip. Good tea. Chapter 416. Meanwhile, in Linzi City, they had gathered to send off Jiang Wang. After Jiang Wang left, everyone dispersed. Of course, the waiters in the tea house were curious as they covered their ears and left. Li Longchuan bid farewell to everyone and returned home alone. Old Madam Li had been living in Linzi recently, so he had less time to play outside. It was inevitable that he would spend more time with her. He didn't take a sedan chair and walked with only one attendant. After walking out of the deep alley and crossing a street, he suddenly saw a familiar figure hurriedly passing by. He shouted, "Su Gao Gao." Su Xianqian stopped and turned around helplessly. He unfolded a folding fan and waved it close to his face, revealing only his eyes and unusually high forehead. He said in a muffled voice, "What's the matter? Where did you go just now? Why did you disappear when you were in such a hurry?" Li Longchuan chuckled. "There's something." Li Longchuan leaned forward and asked, "What's the matter? What does it have to do with you, ah?" He shouted. Li Longchuan had taken advantage of his unpreparedness and snatched away his folding fan. His nose, which was stuffed with a piece of cloth, and the corner of his lips were still bruised. "Ha ha!" Li Longchuan couldn't help but laugh. Su Xianqian snatched back the folding fan and quickly unfolded it to cover his face. His fierce voice came from behind the folding fan. "What are you laughing at? Quiet. Don't be nervous." Li Longchuan couldn't stop laughing. "They didn't walk the same path as me. They won't meet you." Su Xianqian still held the folding fan and firmly protected his face. His eyes darted left and right vigilantly. Chongshin Fat and the others aren't the only ones who know me and Lindsay. They aren't the only ones who know that you were beaten by my sister. Su Xiangqian flew into a rage out of humiliation and stomped his foot. I told you not to laugh. Li Longchuan was already prepared. He nimbly stepped back and caused Su Xiangqian to miss. Su Xiangqian fiercely added, "You haven't been beaten by her before? Most of that happened when we were young. Besides, you've been beaten more than me." Li Longchuan looked at him with pity. "Was your forehead beaten up again?" Su Xiangqian. Master Su had always been the one to choke others. When had he ever been the one to choke others? However, getting beaten up for spreading rumors wasn't something to be proud of. He didn't continue to be angry with Li Longchuan. He rolled his eyes and asked, "After I left, what happened?" "What do you mean?" Li Longchuan asked knowingly. Su Xiangqian pretended to be indifferent. "It's about your sister going to Zhe County with Jiang Wang. What else can we do?" Li Longchuan still didn't understand. "My uncle asked her to take care of Jiang Wang because he thinks highly of Jiang Wang's talent. It's not like she's taking care of him." Uncle probably felt that although his sister was strong, she had not seen many life and death situations. "I'm afraid we'll have to ask Jiang Wang to take care of this." That makes sense." Su Xiangqian continued to put on an act. And then? "And then what?" Li Longchuan asked, even though he already knew the answer. "It's Jiang Wang." Su Xiangqian couldn't pretend anymore. He asked directly, "Did you get beaten up?" "Yeah, did you get beaten up?" Li Longchuan looked at him with disdain. "You're good friends. You seem to want him to get beaten up?" Su Xiangqian laughed. "We share weal and woe." He quickly changed his words. "Fellow sufferers sympathize with each other." "Ha ha. When he comes back, you can ask him yourself." Li Longchuan was satisfied with the torment. He left without a care. "You." Su Xiangqian couldn't help but point his folding fan at his back. However, he quickly reacted and covered his face again. Sigh. There was only a long sigh. People's hearts are not what they used to be. People's hearts are not what they used to be. Zhe County was north of Lindsay. Li Fengyao's pretty maid was called Xiaotong. The route she chose was through the entire Ximing County. Of course, this route was also approved by Jiang Wang and Li Fengyao. "Xiao Wang." Li Fengyao broke the silence and asked, "Do you know anything about the Seven Stars Tower?" It was probably due to the sense of responsibility brought by the title of sister. "Not much." Jiang Wang shook his head, and then he thought of something and took out a book from his bosom. "Before we set off, Alliance Master Qing Shi of the Four Seas Commerce Alliance gave me a set of information about the Seven-Star Pavilion." "Oh, Big Sister Fengyao. Do you want to take a look?" The way he called her Sister Fengyao was really 30% shy and 70% obedient. Even Li Fengyao, who was known as the Ice Jade Phoenix, couldn't help but soften her gaze. Seven-Star Tower was a famous arcane realm. After many years of exploration, every family had a certain level of understanding. The Li family of Stone Gate was no exception. However, it might not be as comprehensive as the Four Seas Business Alliance's information. She took the book and flipped through it carefully. She raised her eyebrows and took out a letter. "There's another letter here. It's from Qingxi." As she spoke, she gently placed the letter on the low table beside Jiang Wang. The envelope was yellowed and had the smell of time. Her fingers glowed like ice and snow. "A letter for me?" Jiang Wang was also surprised. When did Qingxi have such a close relationship with him? She even attached a letter to the information about Seven-Star Tower. It was inexplicably mysterious. He shook his head and opened the letter. The letter didn't say anything shameful. Qingxi only used the tone of an elder to persuade Jiang Wang and expressed her anticipation for his future. She also vaguely expressed the intention of recruiting him from the perspective of the Four Seas Business Alliance. It was all cliché and nothing new. At the same time, she said in the letter that if he encountered any difficulties in Seven-Star Tower, he could seek help from the Four Seas Business Alliance's first deacon, Feng Chong, who also went to Seven-Star Tower. Finally, at the end of the letter, she mentioned that she had an ancient elixir recipe in her hands. It was a recipe for increasing one's lifespan. If Jiang Wang obtained a lifespan-increasing treasure on this trip, He might as well give it to the Four Seas Business Alliance's alchemy experts. They could maximize the effects of the treasure and definitely wouldn't let Jiang Wang suffer. In short, the entire letter was very cordial. It was as if she was treating Jiang Wang as her nephew and taking care of him. After reading the letter, Jiang Wang didn't quite understand what Qingxi wanted to do. It was as if she was purely trying to rope him in. Li Fengyao flipped through the information regarding Seven Star Tower and casually said, "I heard from my uncle that Alliance Master Qingxi never does business at a loss." Jiang Wang nodded and said, "Of course, I don't dare to underestimate her." Li Fengyao didn't say anything else. She looked at the information for a while before taking out a brush and ink from the carriage's secret compartment and writing on it. Jiang Wang then closed his eyes and cultivated. He didn't say anything for a long time. "All right." Li Fengyao's voice called out Jiang Wang from his cultivation. "I made some additions to this information. Take a look at it together." Jiang Wang responded and took the booklet. He saw that there were many small words between the lines. The words were thin and gorgeous, giving people the impression that it was like the person who wrote them. It was beautiful, but it was inevitable that there was a sense of distance. He carefully read through the Seven Star Tower's information and memorized the important information in his heart. The Seven Star Tower was different from the Tianfu Mystic Land. No information could be brought out from the Tianfu Mystic Land. Therefore, no one knew about it in advance. They were all on the same level. After so many years of exploration, the competition for the Seven Star Tower had already begun when the information was collected. After supplementing the information and handing it to Jiang Wang, Li Fengyao closed her eyes and cultivated. Jiang Wang carefully read the information and continued to immerse himself in cultivation. Cultivation made him feel very comfortable. They didn't speak for the rest of the journey. After an unknown period of time, Jiang Wang absent-mindedly exited from his cultivation state. He lifted the curtain and asked, "Where are we?" Xiaodong was sitting sideways with one of her small legs dangling in the air. She looked at the environment and said, "We should be in Songcheng." Oh, Jiang Wang didn't look here again. The carriage curtain was lowered. The carriage returned to silence again. Chapter 417. In terms of territory, Days County was twice as big as Ximing County. It was rich in resources. There were 18 big and small cities in the county. The city where the Tian family's ancestral land was located was usually called Tian City. It was not originally named this, but as time passed, most people only remembered the word Tian. The Seven Stars Tower of the Arcane Realm was located here. The fields on both sides of the official road were planned uniformly. They looked neat and symmetrical. They could overlap with the official road as the center. The main city itself was squarish. From afar, it looked like a heavy black cube. The bricks of the city walls were all black, neat and solemn. They looked more like iron than bricks. The carriage stopped at the city gate. When they looked up, they realized that the original name of the city was G City. This word was also squarish. It did not have a personal style. There was only the strictness and neatness of each stroke. It gave people an indescribable feeling. When I see this word, I feel a sense of urgency. Jiang Wang said. Li Fengyao looked at him and did not say anything. The word Ji originally meant that a person was getting close to the food utensils and was about to eat. It had the meaning of about to and close to. The carriage drove into the city calmly. Whether it was the prestige of the city destroying Marquis Mansion in Qi or the relationship between Zheng Genjia and the Tian family, they would not let anything happen here. Everything in sight, the shops, the streets, and the market, were all neat and orderly. G City was like the word Tian. It was squarish and neat. Every part was equally divided, no more and no less. It was unknown whether the Tian family gave this city its style, or it was this kind of city that gave birth to the famous family in Qi, Day's Tian family. Xiaodong drove the carriage on the wide street. The pedestrians consciously walked on the side of the road. Even the vendors lined up neatly on both sides of the street. None of them occupied the road. Although it was said to be driving, Jihei did not need to be driven. Xiaodong only needed to tell it to go left or right. and it would adjust the direction by itself. Jiang Wang suspected that it was a pure-blooded demon beast, and not a mixed breed of demon beast. Although it was a rare mount, Jiang Wang had seen it before. Its spirituality was far inferior to Go Black's. Speaking of which, the Tian family and the Zhongginjia had swapped benefits. They had exchanged the rights to develop Chongji Island for Tian Antai's position as Rizhao Prefecture's town commissioner. Both sides had profited, but Cheng Gongsheng was the only one who had suffered losses. This time, Cheng Gongsheng took the initiative to ask the Tian family for a spot in the Seven-Star Pavilion. He also expressed that he would let bygones be bygones and repair the relationship between the Tian family and the Tian family. This was also to prevent the other party from helping Yung Genzuan, because in the beginning, it was Yung Genzuan who had facilitated the exchange of interest between the two parties. Both sides had a reason to continue working together. However, although Cheng Gongsheng asked the Tian family for a place, Jiang Wang did not wait for the Tian family to receive him. He and Li Fengyao stayed in an inn in the city and waited for the opening of the Seven-Star Pavilion. The Seven-Star Pavilion opened in September when the star power was at its peak. This date was not fixed. In previous years, there was an entire September when the star power could not reach its peak. Those years were known as the Silent Year, which was opposite to the Radiant Year. In addition, although the Seven-Star Pavilion was open, there were few treasures, and the participants could only obtain a few treasures. It was known as the Dark Year. Now, according to the news released by the Tian family, the star power in the city would reach its peak between the 12th of September and the 14th of September. The opening of the Seven-Star Pavilion was also confirmed to be within this range. From the information that he had memorized, the longest opening of the Seven-Star Pavilion in the past was a month, and the shortest opening was 9 days. Jiang Wang was almost certain that he would miss the Blessed Land Challenge in the Great Illusionary Land in September. He was used to the decline in the ranking of the Blessed Land. His only regret was that he had lost a chance to fight with the strong. Although he and Li Fengyao called each other Little Wang and Sister Fengyao and rode the same carriage to the city, they did not have much time to talk along the way. Both of them were immersed in their own cultivation. It was the same when they arrived at the inn. There were a total of 3 rooms. Jiang Wang stayed in one room, Li Fengyao and Xiaotong stayed in the other room, and Black stayed in the other room. Its food was prepared by Xiaotong herself. It's just a horse that pulls the carriage. Jiang Wang's heart fluctuated countless times along the way, but he never said it out loud. It could be seen that this demon horse's temper was not good. After it entered the room, it kicked all the tables and chairs in the room and swept its tail. The innkeeper rushed up with a pained look on his face. Xiaotong was by his side, paying the bill 1 silver ingot at a time. She waited for Black to renovate the entire guest room until it was empty, leaving only a big bed without a roof. So, why did they have to open a separate guest room for it? There were still many things that Jiang Wang could not figure out. For example, why were all the rooms in this exactly the same? The materials, layout, and even the orientation of the tables, chairs, and beds were exactly the same. His room was no different from the room before Black renovated it. Did it have to be so identical and symmetrical? He could not see the slightest bit of individuality. Even though the city was not a city that could make him feel comfortable, no matter where he was, cultivation would not change. Jiang Wang sat cross-legged on the bed, forgetting about everything else. The soaring dragon Dao vein walked further and further in the fog of ignorance, and the map of the entire 5 prefectures sea in his mind became clearer. There were many times when he approached the first inner residence that flickered with theurgy seeds, but Jiang Wang chose to pass by in the end. As Jiang Wang's strength grew stronger, his worldly isolated island also grew stronger. However, the process was even slower. As usual, he stopped at the warning line, turned around the soaring Dragon Dao vein, and landed on the worldly isolated island, and completed his cultivation for the day. Jiang Wang did not waste any time and entered the great illusionary land in a flash. Along the way with Li Fengyao, he did not have the opportunity to enter the great illusionary land. Entering the great illusionary land was very covert, and no one had discovered it yet. However, there was no need to display it in front of others like he was presenting a treasure. Ranked 8th in the soaring dragon realm, losing the honorary title of Great Illusionary Six Directions Cultivator. Such a notification sounded. The competition in the Great Illusionary Land was also very fierce. If one was not careful, they would lose the honorary title. Fortunately, his ranking did not drop by much. It seemed that in the Great Illusionary Land, his strength at the Soaring Dragon Realm was still very stable. In any case, the benefits brought by the honorary title could not be given up. Jiang Wang made some slight adjustments and began a new match. The power of the lunar star again, and again, such a soft voice sounded in a small building in the Tian residence. Interesting. The voice fell. The small building had 2 floors. If the entire E-City was a large Tian character, then the Tian residence was a small Tian character surrounded by a large Tian character. And this small 2-story building in the Tian residence was the point in the center of the Tian character. As the center of the Tian residence, and even the entire city, the appearance of this small building was extremely strange. Chapter 4:18. At first glance, the building looked like a vertical well. However, this well did not extend downwards. Instead, it extended upwards. There were only 2 stories in the building, but it was not short. The 2 stories were evenly spaced and looked thin and long. The top and bottom of the building were of the same size. The building was made of some unknown wood, which did not seem to be suitable for construction. Not only was the wood not smooth enough, there were many lumps like tree burrs. They hung on the walls of the building and looked extremely ugly. It must have taken a lot of effort to build this building with this kind of wood. There were no windows around the building, or rather, the only window was at the top because it did not have a roof. If one sat in the middle of the building, they could see the sky when they looked up. The concept of 2 stories was not only because there was a circle of wooden eaves outside the building, but also because there were 2 stories inside the building. However, there's a round hole in the middle of the 2nd floor. There were no stairs on the 2nd floor, so this was the passageway to the 2nd floor. Overall, the top of the building, the passageway in the middle of the 2nd floor, and the bottom of the building were 3 perfectly parallel circles. However, the top and bottom of the building were of the same size, and the circle in the middle of the 2nd floor was much smaller. It was shaped like an hourglass. There were 4 doors in the building. They faced all 4 directions. The doors were also arched inwards and fit perfectly into the walls of the well. Only the door in the north was not locked. The other 3 doors were bound by black chains, as if they were locking something. Only the door in the north had a plaque with the name of the building written on it. It also meant that the north door was the main entrance. The plaque read, Fu Bai. Everyone in the Tian clan knew that Fu Bai was an important place. Those who were not of a certain status were not allowed to get close to it. This Fu Bai building was Tian Anping's residence. Tian Anping was born late. He was 17 years younger than his brother, Tian Antai, the current Rizhao Prefecture town supervisor. Tian Antai, who had been in the army for many years, was very obedient in front of Tian Anping. Even though Tian Antai was in the Chiu Slaughter Army, one of the 9 soldiers, and even though he was now the county governor of a prefecture, he was waiting for the Yang land to completely submit to him before he could become the prefecture governor of a prefecture. At this moment, Tian Anping was alone in Fu Bai Pavilion. His upper body was bare, his feet were bare, and he was only wearing a pair of trousers. He sat cross-legged on the ground and looked up at the sky. He was always looking up at the sky. The sky contained all the complexities of the world. The white clouds, the gray dogs, the sun, the moon, and the galaxy. He only looked at this side of the sky. He called this viewing the sky from the bottom of a well. His upper body was quite well built. His muscles were not excessive, but they were very well defined. The most eye-catching thing was that the whip marks on his body were covered in blood clots, as if he had just suffered some kind of punishment. But there was no pain on his face. Interesting. He repeated his words. He was motionless, looking up at the sky. He seemed to have countless questions, and all the answers were hidden in the sky. After another hearty battle, Jiang Wang exited the great illusionary realm. He realized that the difficulty of challenging the title of Great Void Six Directions Cultivator was not as great as before. Although it was true that he had not stopped cultivating and was improving every day, it was not to the extent that he had become so much stronger in just a few days. It was because his opponents were indeed not as good as before. He had been challenging the fourth place of the Soaring Dragon Realm, but the opponents he encountered were still not as good as the young man in the luxurious robe he faced when he won the title of Great Void Six Directions Cultivator. Now that he had to do it again, he was not confident that he could defeat that person again. Of course, he would not lose his confidence. After all, he was the one who won that time. There was no reason for him not to win again. But from an objective analysis of combat power, he was indeed completely defeated in terms of Dao techniques. Whether it was the strength of the Dao techniques or the control of the Dao techniques, he was far inferior. He guessed that the young man in the luxurious robe should have risen to a higher ranking, which was why they could not fight again. And the opponents he encountered now were, of course, very strong. But on paper, none of them could surpass the young man in the luxurious robe who was good at water element Dao techniques. The benefits that the fourth and sixth place of the Soaring Dragon Realm of the Great Illusionary Realm did not change. Perhaps there will be new surprises when one was in the top 3 or first place. Jiang Wang stayed in the inn for 3 days. Powerhouses from all over the Qi dynasty gathered in the city one after another. Li Fengyao almost never left the house, but Xiaotong often came to visit and told Jiang Wang some gossip from time to time, so that he could be prepared for the upcoming meeting at the 7-Star Tower. The scale of the meeting at the 7-Star Tower this time was not too grand compared to the peak of the previous years. Although the so-called Year of Radiance was a hot topic, it was a fact that the 7-Star Tower's harvest was gradually declining. Of course, this was only a relative term. At least from Jiang Wang's point of view, it was already very terrifying. One must know that every time the 7-Star Tower opened, there were a total of 108 spots. Apart from the 20 spots that the Tian family had, there were 88 spots for powerhouses from all over the world to compete for. The people who came were all above the Soaring Dragon Realm. There were a total of nearly 300 people. In the end, only 88 people were qualified to enter the 7-Star Tower. It was about the probability of 1 in 3. What did it mean for 300 cultivators above the Soaring Dragon Realm to gather in one place? One must know that in a small affiliated country like the Yang country, a powerhouse at the peak of the Soaring Dragon Realm could assume the position of a city lord. Among the people who obtained the spots to enter the 7-Star Tower's secret realm, there were many Intermansion Realm powerhouses like Li Fengyao. An Intermansion Realm powerhouse was enough to assume the position of a city lord in a small independent country like the Zhuang country, even if they only open a mansion. If it was not for the Tian family of the Great Swamp, which was a top-notch family and had enough terrifying powerhouses in their base camp, they would not be able to organize such a meeting. Ordinary forces couldn't even maintain basic order. On the other hand, hosting such a meeting was also a reflection of the Tian family of the Great Swamp strength. Of course, if the Tian family could not afford to host a secret realm like the 7-Star Tower, there were many other powerful forces who were willing to do so. Xiaodong's long-winded nagging allowed Jiang Wang to build up enough mental preparation. The most noteworthy people in the 7-Star Tower's meeting were the powerhouses who were the center of attention. The first was the 11th prince, Jiang Wuqi's maternal family, the Lei family of the Tianjiao, Lei Fuqian. It was said that in the black market's gambling house, he had the highest winning rate by a wide margin. Most people believed that he could leave the 7-Star Tower with the first place in the Big Dipper realm. Next was the first deacon of the Four Seas Business Alliance, Feng Chong. He was an experienced Intermansion Realm powerhouse with a strong cultivation base and outstanding combat strength. He had fought for the Four Seas Business Alliance and made a name for himself. Next was Li Fengyao. Although she rarely fought outside and did not have any outstanding achievements in front of others. However, just the name Shi Min Li and her inner mansion realm cultivation bays were enough to make everyone widen their eyes and treat her with caution. These three people were the most popular candidates for the first place in the Big Dipper realm. As for Jiang Wang, who was selected through his connections in the betting list of the underground casino, he was not on the list. When the casino set the odds, most of it was based on the performance of the contestants in the seven-star Tower's secret realm. At the same time, they also paid attention to the various disputes and fights in the city. Jiang Wang was in the Tian family's secret realm, so there was no need for him to fight for it. He had been in seclusion for the past few days, so there was no news at all. His few battles in Lindsay were also fought in a small area and didn't spread far and wide. The feeling of being ignored, Jiang Wang was very satisfied. Chapter 419. The secret realm of the seven-star tower was located in an empty valley in the north of G-City. An excellent secret realm was enough to support the rise and fall of a family. After many years of operation, the Tian clan had built this place into a fortress. They stationed troops, built watchtowers, set up formations. There was only one path in and out of the valley. During the period when the seven-star tower was not open, this passageway had to be closed. With the power that the Tian clan of the Great Zay had invested here, if they had any evil intentions, no one who participated in the secret realm of the seven-star tower would be able to leave alive. But this kind of thing was almost impossible, because giving up these spots was not based on the Tian clan of the Great Zay's initiative. It was the request of the other top forces in Qi and even the court in Qi dynasty. The 20 spots that could be reserved without fighting were the greatest preferential treatment that the Tian clan had won for themselves. Other than that, they had to fight for whatever they wanted in the seven-star tower. Of course, the secret realm of the seven-star tower still belonged to the Tian clan of the Great Zay in name. Every time the secret realm of the seven stars tower was opened, they would hold a grand event that was branded with the Tian family's mark. They would use this opportunity to expand the family's influence and create substantial benefits for the city. These operations were the Tian family of the Great Zay. No one could interfere with them. When the secret realm of the seven-star tower was open, the Tian clan not only had to follow the rules, they also had to protect all participants from being harmed by factors outside the secret realm of the seven-star tower. The Xiuzhe who participated in the seven-star tower came from all over Qi, and there were many powerful forces among them. No one was willing to offend so many forces at once. If the Tian clan could not follow the rules, there would naturally be forces that would follow the rules to take over the secret realm of the seven-star tower. After 3 rounds of confirmation, Jiang Wang and Li Fengyao were able to enter this famous valley. This valley was named Seven-Star Valley because of the secret realm of the seven-star tower. After sending them out of the valley, Xiao Tong drove back to the inn alone. Today was the 13th of the 9th month. The Tian clan had confirmed that the seven-star tower would open today. Jiang Wang and Li Fengyao came late. The two did not like to socialize. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, they purposely came before the time limit. When they entered the valley, most of the Xiuzhe who participated in the seven-star tower had arrived. They were scattered in 2s and 3s in different places, only leaving a huge circular field in the middle of the valley. Without a doubt, Li Fengyao was the focus of everyone's attention. There were many female cultivators participating in the Heavenly Palace secret realm, but none of them could compare to Li Fengyao's beauty. She did not wear a veil, for her face needed no concealment. She wasn't someone who would sacrifice herself to avoid trouble. That pair of cold and arrogant, beautiful eyes only slightly swept over, and those who cast their gazes over all avoided one after another. Her beauty seemed to have a natural distance. Jiang Wang, who was standing next to Li Fengyao, was inevitably targeted by all kinds of judgmental and provocative eyes. There were also many people whispering to each other, inquiring about him. Jiang Wang strained his ears and occasionally heard a few words. They were all questions such as, who is he, and what right does he have? Because of Li Fengyao, a person who didn't even have a name in the underground casino's bets, was receiving attention that didn't belong to him. Jiang Wang didn't provoke anyone, nor did he respond to anyone's provocation. He just silently observed everyone. Every single person here could be an opponent. The most eye-catching person in the crowd, other than Li Fengyao, was a man of medium height with loose hair. He stood there, and people couldn't help but want to look up at him. He wasn't very tall, but it seemed that one could only see him if they raised their head. His face was calm, his eyes like the deep sea, and he was imposing without being angry. This person was the Tianjiao of the Lei family, Lei Zhanqian. He just stood there and didn't speak to anyone. But the people around him, consciously or unconsciously, were all centered around him. Jiang Wang had once seen Lei Zhanqian of the Lei family on Cloud Mist Mountain. He was of the main branch of the Lei family, and was cousins with Lei Zhanqian, but their temperaments were completely different. The short and stout Lei Yikuan had a more violent personality. On the other side, Fang Chong, who was also surrounded by people, had a different style. He was a middle-aged man with a kind smile. He chatted and laughed with the people around him and got along well. When Jiang Wang entered the valley, he even took the initiative to smile at Jiang Wang. There were 108 people that entered the secret realm of Seven Star House. Some people only believed in themselves, and some were planning to work together. Everyone was different. In reality, Jiang Wang didn't mind mingling in a small group to avoid attracting attention. But standing next to Li Fengyao, no one came close, and he couldn't keep a low profile. Of all the Xiuzha in the valley, other than Li Fengyao, there was only one person that Jiang Wang was familiar with. It was Lian Xiao of the Lian family of Nanyao. He was the member of the Lian family who had mocked Lian Ke in front of the sword furnace when Lian Ke was refining yearning for everlasting yearning. Of course, in Lian Ke's mouth, he was just a pitiful person who wasn't born free. Lian Ke had gotten his own life tablet. Lian Xiao had not, and their fates had diverged. Now that they met again, this Lian Xiao seemed much more peaceful. Seeing Jiang Wang again in Seven Star Valley, he didn't have any unusual behavior. After parting at Nanyao City last time, Lian Ke had started to compete for the position of the next patriarch of the Lian family. Even though Cheng Gengsheng had secretly given him ideas, the situation was not very good, because Cheng Gengsheng had been busy with his own affairs in the past. Lian Ke's personality was more than tough, but not mellow enough. He really wasn't good at management. Of course, these were his words. Time quickly passed. After Jiang Wang finished observing the situation of his opponent, he continued to organize himself. Preparation was never enough. Recently, the nether candle had been very calm, but Jiang Wang could sense that Jiang Yin was cultivating in a way that he did not know. In other words, as Jiang Wang was improving, Jiang Yin, who was living in the nether candle, had not stopped. But Jiang Wang was not sure if this feeling was due to his own increase in perception, or if Jiang Yin was intentionally revealing it to him. After patrolling around the isolated island a few times, he heard a rumbling sound. He turned around to look. The sealed passage in the valley was opened again. A man with delicate features and a feminine temperament strode in. His ears were buzzing with discussion. Why is there still someone coming at this time? Wasn't sealed off? Chill. Quiet, it's the ninth prince. The valley instantly fell silent. The ninth prince of the Qi, Jiang Wuxia, was not a good-tempered person. If it had been the crown prince, who was known for his generosity, they would have dared to say a few more words. The Tian family had strict rules about the time of entry into the Seven Stars Valley. The sealed passage in the valley was a manifestation of this rule. Logically speaking, at this time, the Seven Stars Valley secret realm was about to open, and no one should be allowed to enter the valley. But to the ninth prince of Great Qi, Jiang Wuxia, these so-called rules were obviously not valid. Jiang Wuxia walked calmly, not caring about the various looks people were giving him. He looked down at the people in the valley as if he were the owner of this place, inspecting his territory. Wherever his gaze swept, the proud, transcendent cultivators naturally lowered their heads and bowed to show their respect. At this moment, someone suddenly shouted to the person in charge of maintaining order in the Tian family, "Since the passage in the Seven Stars Valley can still be opened, my friend is outside. Why don't you let him in? He's just a little late because he was framed. Yes. Does that make sense? Clearly, people are allowed to enter. Why can't my junior brother enter? No one paid attention to them. In the end, there were only so many people who could enter the Seven Stars Valley. Anyone could be said to be a competitor. Before that, it was better to have one less person. So in fact, before the secret realm opened, all kinds of methods had never been cut off. Setting a trap to make people late was one of the simplest methods. Generally speaking, as long as this kind of thing was not too big and no lives were lost, the Tion family would not care. As for whether anyone would fall for it, it was their own business. At least, most people were very careful before the secret realm opened. Those who lost the opportunity because of carelessness could not be blamed on the Tion family. In fact, the person who shouted was also aware of this point. The reason why he still shouted was nothing more than to take advantage of Jiang Wuxia's privilege to see if he could fight for another chance for his friend. It was fine if no one paid attention to him. Shouting a few times was already very benevolent. He did not dare to pester him. Jiang Wuxia walked into the valley leisurely, ignoring the people who bowed to him and the various noises. His eyes casually swept around and landed on Li Fengyao. "Hey, elder sister Li." His eyes lit up and the corners of his mouth curled up. Jiang Wuxia's smile was not very solemn, but did not make people feel uncomfortable. Perhaps it was because his face was too delicate, a frivolous smile to ordinary people, but on his face there was a kind of evil and roguish beauty. With the Li family of Sherman, even if Jiang Wuxia was a member of the royal family of the Qi, he could still call her elder sister. Li Fengyao nodded slightly as a response. "The ninth prince is also here." "Yes," Jiang Wuxia said as he walked forward. But he was slightly stopped by Li Fengyao's gaze and stopped about 3 steps away. He did not take it seriously, and his face was very calm. Perhaps he was used to Li Fengyao's cold arrogance. He stood there and continued to say enthusiastically, "When we enter the Seven Stars Tower later, elder sister Li, please show mercy." Li Fengyao said lightly, "You're too modest." He did not say anything else. Jiang Wuxia did not feel embarrassed. He looked around, and his eyes fell on Jiang Wang, who was standing next to Li Fengyao, and just glanced at him. There was a trace of surprise in his eyes, but it was only a trace of surprise. Jiang Wang stood there proudly, with no sadness or joy on his face. His eyes were indifferent. Many people had all kinds of speculations about him coming to the Seven Stars Valley with Li Fengyao. But Jiang Wang's confidence had always been based on himself. With a sword in hand, he had nothing to fear. Just at this moment, everyone's vision suddenly darkened. It was as if there was an invisible hand pulling a huge curtain over. The sky suddenly darkened in the Seven Stars Valley. Chapter 420. The sky turned from bright to dark in an instant, and the Seven Stars Valley suddenly entered the night. The Tion clan members in the valley did not come out to maintain order because there was no time for panic. Just as darkness appeared, light shone. The light source came from the huge circular field in the middle of the valley. It was a circle of light that gradually lit up. 1, 2, 3. Densely packed halos of light quickly covered the huge circular arena. Each circle of light could accommodate an adult standing in it. There was a sufficient distance between each circle of light. There were a total of 108 circles of light. Jiang Wang knew. There were a total of 108 places to enter the secret realm of the Seven Stars Tower, which was also known as the 108 star positions. It was divided into 36 heavenly spirit positions and 72 earthly fiend positions. The circles of light in front of them were the star positions. Those who were qualified to enter the secret realm of the Seven Stars Tower would step into the star position and wait for the starlight of the Seven Stars Tower to guide them. Where there were people, there would be martial arts. Where there was a ranking, there would be competition. There would naturally be competition for the 36 heavenly spirit positions and 72 earthly fiend positions. The previous competition for the qualification of the Seven Stars Tower was also to determine the order in advance. At this point in time, most people should already know where they were. In the pitch-black valley, mysterious circles of light appeared one after another, illuminating the Seven Stars Valley as if it was a dream. At the same time, it also attracted everyone's attention. Before many people could react to the sudden opening of the star positions, they saw a figure walking forward. The person's long hair was loose, and he strode forward without hesitation. In a few steps, he stepped into the largest and brightest circle of light and occupied the heavenly leader star position. He turned around to face everyone expressionlessly. It was Lei Zhanqian. Among the cultivators gathered in the Seven Stars Valley, there was Fang Chong from the Four Seas Business Alliance, who had been in the Inner Palace for many years. There was also Li Fengyao, the legitimate daughter of the Sherman Li family, who came from a top family. There was also Jiang Wuxia, the ninth prince of the Deqi royal family. Lei Zhanqian still did not decline and stepped into the heavenly leader star position calmly. He indeed had the momentum of monopolizing the universe. Regarding the Seven Stars Tower, the first heavenly spirit position that people often talked about was the heavenly leader star position. Generally speaking, the person who appeared in the heavenly leader star position when leaving the secret realm of the Seven Stars Tower was the person who gained the most in the secret realm. He was also regarded as the winner of this trip. Of course, when he entered the secret realm of the heavenly leader star position, he would have a greater advantage. At this point, everyone had a certain level of understanding of where they should be. For those who were more cautious, it was better to retreat than to advance. In this kind of tacit ranking, if one stood in the wrong position, they might be killed after entering the Seven-Star Tower. Lei Zhanqian took the lead and walked into the heavenly leader star position, ignoring the gazes of others. The corners of Jiang Wuxia's mouth twitched. She was obviously not in a good mood, but she did not say anything. He was naturally on the opposite side of Jiang Wuxia. No one would give in the battle for the throne. No matter how harmonious the princes and princesses of Deqi were outside, the conflict could not be resolved. On the contrary, the princes and princesses who had no hope of becoming the emperor were on better terms with each other. Jiang Wuxia had not said a word to Lei Zhanqian since she came in. The two did not even make eye contact. This was the embodiment of this conflict. Fang Chonglu of the Four Seas Business Alliance waited for a few seconds and smiled. If no one occupies the heavenly spirit star position, I'll go. Although he was asking everyone, his eyes were on Jiang Wuxia. Obviously, he wanted to curry favor with her and did not want to steal the ninth prince's limelight. The heavenly spirit star was ranked second among the 36 heavenly spirits, just behind the heavenly leader star. Jiang Wuxia pursed her lips and turned to Li Fengyao. "Sister Li, you go first." Li Fengyao was not restrained. She only said to Jiang Wang, "I'll go first. Be careful." Then, she flew to the heavenly spirit star position. She did not decline. This time, Jiang Wuxia deliberately glanced at Jiang Wang again, but did not say anything. She followed Li Fengyao and stepped into the Tianji star position. Fang Chonglu did not fight for it. He was not in a hurry. When the three of them stood still, he cupped his hands and bowed to everyone before stepping into the Leisure Sky star position. The cultivators in the Seven Stars Valley all chose their star positions. Many people also paid attention to Jiang Wang's choice because of Li Fengyao's special treatment. There were even a few people who were waiting with the idea of squeezing out his position and making him look bad. However, a young man walked out from the Tian clan and waved at Jiang Wang. "Prince Jiang, over here." Jiang Wang's spot was directly given to him by the Tian clan. It was within the Tian clan's original 20 spots. An intermansion realm cultivator like Li Fengyao could directly skip the competition and secure a spot. It was the same for Lei Zhanqian and Fang Chonglu. Of course, if the Seven Stars Tower only sent intermansion realm cultivators, or if more than half of them were intermansion realm cultivators, they would not receive such treatment. Overall, the competition for the spots in the Seven Stars Tower's secret realm was relatively fair. There was not much controversy. The young man who greeted Jiang Wang was Tian Chong. He was the leader of the Tian clan's Seven Stars Tower's secret realm team this time. The Tian clan's fixed 20 spots were from the Earth Fiend Star, the Dog Star, to the Earth Complete Star. In short, they occupied the last 20 star positions. Among them, Jiang Wang's spot was the seventh from the bottom, the Earth Punishment Star. It was not harsh, but of course, it was not very considerate. In short, a person who relied on connections to sneak into the Seven Stars Tower's secret realm did not need to invest too much. When they saw Jiang Wang sneaking into the Tian clan's team without changing his expression, many people's gazes changed. Some people no longer felt that he was an opponent worthy of vigilance. More people despised him. Such a hoodlum. How could he deserve Li Fengyao's special attention? A group of cultivators occupied the star positions one after another. Occasionally, there was friction, but in front of the Tian clan's powerhouse, they all restrained themselves. In the end, 8 out of the 108 star positions were empty. These 8 people could not reach the 7 Stars Valley in time for various reasons and withdrew early from the competition. The Tian clan's 20 spots were not changed because of the vacancy. Therefore, the 8 empty star positions were from the Earth Fiend's 21st from the bottom, the Earth Solitary Star, to the Earth Fiend star position. This time, Tian Huanzhong was in charge of the 7 Stars Valley. He was the uncle of the Tian clan's current clan leader. Of course, his seniority was very high. Of course, there was no need to doubt his strength. Once everyone had settled on the star positions, he pointed to the sky 7 times. Those who paid attention would notice that every time he pointed, it corresponded to the position of the Big Dipper. The Big Dipper's 7 stars were called Dubhe, Merak, Fekta, Migrez, Alioth, Mizar, and Alcade. In the pitch-black night sky above the valley, 7 light spots lit up one after another. In the valley, he directly pointed to the Big Dipper's 7 stars, guiding the power of the 7 stars to suppress the other stars. This was something that could only be done by at least the outer building realm. The 7 light spots became brighter and brighter, more and more dazzling. They formed the shape of a jade spoon, hanging in the sky. Then, the jade spoon was slightly tilted, and endless starlight poured down like water. It was as if someone in the 9 heavens used a jade spoon to scoop up the water of the Milky Way and poured it down into the world. The people in the world looked up at the sky and saw the starlight flowing down like a waterfall. Chapter 421. Starlight poured down from the sky like rain, but did not fall into the valley. There seemed to be an invisible barrier above the valley that received the starlight rain. A magnificent change happened at this moment. The starlight poured down and gathered together. It followed a certain pattern and slowly formed a base. Then, the walls, windows, and eaves under the gaze of everyone in the valley, the starlight in the sky poured into the shape of a small building. The starlight flowed and slowly filled in the details. Window decorations, textures, murals. Finally, a building with 7 floors of starlight condensed and formed. It was suspended above the valley. It was like the residence of an immortal. Jiang Wang also looked up at it. He was indeed amazed by its beauty, but he also felt that it was unreal. It was as if it existed here, but it did not exist here. It was a contradictory feeling. The 7-star tower is open. Someone shouted excitedly, but he quickly realized that the surroundings were quiet, so he firmly shut his mouth. 7 stars in the north. The sound of the river flows to the west. Tian Huanzhong's voice sounded. He made a hand seal and removed the last layer of the Tian family's arrangement above the 7-star valley. Hence, the 7-star tower was opened. The current situation was that the 7-star tower, which was filled with starlight, was suspended above the valley. On the huge, circular platform in the middle of the valley, 100 cultivators stood in the light circles of the stars. The starlight flowed and painted. The 7-star tower had completed all the details. Then it shone brightly. The brilliance was bright, but not dazzling. Even if the moon hung in the night sky, it would be suppressed by the brilliance of the 7-star tower. This was the time of the 7-star tower's solo dance. The brilliance shone into the valley. Jiang Wang could vaguely sense that there was a subtle reaction between the star position he occupied and the light coming from the 7 stars pagoda. He knew very well that the next step would be to be sent into the 7-star tower. The information about the seven-star tower's secret realm that Li Fengyao added and modified was very detailed. It described most of the steps. It was also a reminder for the current situation. Not only could they not relax at this moment, they also needed to focus their attention. Everyone, Lei Zhanxian, who was standing at the Tinkue star position, suddenly squatted down and pressed one palm on the ground. There was a kind of innate passion in his voice. What should not come should not come. Dragons do not live with snakes. The moment his palm touched the ground, an extremely dazzling light erupted from his palm. At that moment, it almost overshadowed the light of the seven-star tower. At the same time, all 108 star positions in the central space of the Seven Stars Valley were filled with lightning. The lightning was either in the shape of a flood dragon or a spirit snake. Each of them was ferocious, biting and tearing at every cultivator who participated in the secret realm of the seven-star pavilion. There was a saying in the Yin written charm scripture, "When the earth emits killing intent, dragons and serpents rise from the land." This killing technique of Lei Zhanxian's was a secret technique of the Lei family that was not passed down to outsiders. It was called Dragon's Serpent Rising, and it used thunder techniques to manifest the killing intent of the heavens and earth. Its killing power was astonishing. It was unknown when it started, but every time before entering the Seven Stars Tower, there would be such a segment at the last moment of the Seven Stars Tower's starlight guidance. Everyone could attack anyone around them at will and find a way to drive them out of the star position. To put it nicely, it was to verify each other's qualifications. In essence, it was just to reduce the number of competitors. This was an unspoken rule that was tacitly agreed upon. It was not explicitly stated, and those who did not understand it beforehand would easily fall for it. Of course, the seven-star tower had been open for so many years, and those who had won the right to enter the secret realm of the seven-star tower already knew about this. When the guiding starlight shone down, everyone was secretly on their guard, and they were also considering whether they could drive anyone out. Many people were waiting to see a good show at the leader of the Heavenly Stars Tower. They wanted to see how those powerhouses who were unwilling to be inferior would teach Lei Zhanxian a lesson. However, no one expected that Lei Zhanxian would be the first to attack, and he actually attacked everyone at the same time. He acted so arrogantly, but there was also a sense of righteousness in his actions. He directly attacked all the cultivators with lightning. Once the killing technique of the level of Dragon Serpent Rising was unleashed, more than 20 cultivators were blasted out of their star positions by the lightning snakes, and they lost the chance to enter the secret realm of the seven-star tower. The trip to the secret realm of the seven-star tower had ended before it even started. Jiang Wuxia, who was the focus of the lightning, smirked. He casually reached out and grabbed a bright red spear. He casually shook the spear in a dazzling manner, and then turned the spearhead around and placed it vertically on the ground. It was just right for the ferocious lightning dragon to be pinned to the ground. This lightning dragon was huge and ferocious, and its power was many times stronger than the lightning snakes that attacked other cultivators. However, under this bright red spear, it did not have any room to struggle. It instantly turned into a few wisps of lightning and dissipated. This spear was bright red all over, and from the tip to the end, it was a single entity. It was hard for people to look away once they saw it. Jiang Wang had heard of the red wand for a long time, but this was the first time he saw the true appearance of this famous spear. Compared to the Fujin spear that he had once borrowed, this spear was undoubtedly much more dazzling and gorgeous. However, it was hard to tell which was stronger and which was weaker. Jiang Wuxia casually shattered the lightning dragon with his spear, and with a flick of the spear, he turned to look at Lei Zhanxian. Then he saw an arrow. It was a glittering and translucent arrow that seemed to have come from ancient times. This arrow fell in front of Lei Zhanxian almost at the same time as his gaze. As his gaze fell, so did the arrow. The two lightning dragons in front of him did not even have time to bare their fangs and brandish their claws before they were frozen in place like ice sculptures. The surging of lightning stopped instantly. This arrow froze the lightning. The frost spread, and the tip of the arrow reached the space between his eyebrows. At this moment, Lei Zhanqian's figure flashed and disappeared. He had used some kind of secret method to communicate with the guiding starlight and enter the secret realm of the seven-star tower one step ahead. All these years, not only the Tian clan of the Great Swamp, but all parties had never stopped researching the secret realm of the seven-star tower. What Lei Zhanqian exposed this time was one of the results. It was enough to show how much the Lei clan had prepared for the secret realm of the seven-star tower, and who was faster than Jiang Wuxia and almost blocked Lei Zhanqian's arrow. Who else could it be? Jiang Wuxia turned to look at Li Fengyao and saw her stomp her foot and shatter the lightning dragon that was attacking her. The frost-kill bow in her hand seemed to be able to freeze one's vision. She was a woman, but her counterattack was more intense than any of the men present. Faced with a killing technique of the level of Dragon Snake Rises, her first choice was to shoot Lei Zhanqian with an arrow. Her second choice was to defend herself. The 108 star positions in the 7-star valley were all at least 3 steps away from each other. Jiang Wang, who was far away at the Earth Fiend star position, also saw this scene. He had never doubted Li Fengyao's strength, but this was indeed the first time he witnessed the combat power that could beat Su Xiangqian repeatedly. Su Xiangqian of the Green Cliff Academy was never weak. In front of Li Fengyao, he could not even run away. The dozens of people from the Tian clan seemed to have been prepared. The moment the Dragon Snake Rises erupted, they formed a formation under Tian Chang's command and directly blocked the lightning out of the formation. They would not deliberately avoid Jiang Wang, who was with them at such a time. Firstly, that would offend him too much. Secondly, it would be a waste of effort and harm others and themselves. Therefore, Jiang Wang was able to watch the show leisurely and take in everyone's reactions. And because of this, after seeing Li Fengyao's archery skills, he was able to immediately notice Lian Xiao, who was already in a difficult situation at the Earth Fiend star position. Probably because several people around him had already been expelled by the lightning, the nearby lightning snakes all gathered around him. There were a total of 7 snakes biting and tearing at him. Seeing that he was in a difficult situation, Jiang Wang seized the opportunity and stepped out of the Tian clan's formation. He easily occupied the empty Earth Fiend star position in front of Lian Xiao and slashed with his sword. The sword light turned a few times. The lightning around Lian Xiao, who was already in a difficult situation, immediately dissipated. The sword slashed the lightning snakes. P.S. 7 stars in the north. The sound of the river flows to the west. Du Fu, climbing the pagoda of the Ci in temple with the Duke. Chapter 422. Thank you. Lian Xiao gasped for breath, his eyes filled with sincere gratitude. If not for Jiang Wang's help, he would have completely lost this opportunity to enter the 7 Stars Tower's secret realm. Unlike Lian Ke, who had his own life card, he had very few chances. For example, the Tianfu secret realm, where the Lian family had a fixed quota, it was very difficult for him to enter. This time, the quota for the secret realm of the 7 Stars Tower was won by himself, and he cherished it very much. Jiang Wang only said, "If you want to thank someone, thank Lian Ke." Lian Xiao was stunned for a moment before he replied, "Understood." Helping Lian Xiao was just a casual gesture. Jiang Wang had originally intended to change the star position temporarily. The Tian family had gathered together and united under Tian Chang's command. If he were to be with them, it would inevitably be somewhat disadvantageous. It was not that he was afraid. If he could compete with some stragglers, why would he choose to compete with a natural alliance of 19 people? He came to the secret realm of the 7 Stars Tower to seize the longevity treasure, not to challenge himself. Moreover, the Earth Zhou star position that he occupied now was ranked 30th in the Earth Fiend star position, which was much better than the Earth Punishment star position. At this time, looking at the overall situation, Lei Zhanqian's sudden burst of power had successfully reduced the number of people by 32. He directly helped everyone to complete the so-called qualification verification. In other words, among the 108 people who had the quota for the secret realm of the Seven Stars Tower, only 68 people could successfully enter the Seven Stars Tower. It was enough to show how intense it was. Tian Huanzhong was indifferent to everything that was happening at the moment. Even if Lei Zhanxian showed that he was determined to win, even if Jiang Wuxia, Li Fengyao, and the others showed great strength, the Tian family's harvest seemed to be very difficult to guarantee. He was indifferent. Because the so-called Year of Radiance this time was not so realistic. Or to put it bluntly, the Tian family was not sure about the harvest of the secret realm of the Seven Stars Tower this time. They were just taking advantage of the opening of the Seven Stars Tower to build momentum. Their real purpose was not the Seven Stars Tower. On the contrary, the more masters there were this time, the more intense the competition was, and the more satisfied he was. The starlight rain in the sky was still falling, and the Seven Stars Tower illuminated the night sky, guiding the starlight to cover all the participants on the valley platform. At this moment, a strange change occurred. A tyrannical force crossed the sky and suddenly descended upon this place. The starlight rain from the jade ladle was still falling, but it no longer fell on the Seven Stars Tower. Instead, it was restrained by some kind of power and condensed into a powerful ray of light. It instantly turned around and shot straight towards the city. To be more precise, it landed in the Tian Manor in the city, in the Fubai building. The Seven Stars Tower in the sky above the Seven Stars Valley began to shake faintly. Without the constant supply of star power, it was about to collapse. What was worse was that once the Seven Star Tower collapsed at this time, all the cultivators who participated in the Seven Star Tower might be lost in it. One had to know that the Seven Stars Tower would not open its doors when the astral energy was not at its peak and did not meet the requirements. Tian Huanzhong's expression changed drastically. He didn't know about this either. What's going on at Fubai Tower? Is he going to destroy the Seven Star Pavilion's mystic realm? It was not that Tian Huanzhong was benevolent and kind. But if something happened to the Seven Star Tower because of the Tian family's actions, the Tian family would bear the brunt and would have to pay an extremely heavy price. One had to know who was participating in the Seven Star Tower's mystic realm this time. The dignified Ninth Prince of Deqi, a strong competitor for the Crown Prince position of Deqi. The Tianjiao of the Lei family, who was regarded as the hope of the family by Old Master Lei Zhanxian. The legitimate daughter of the Sherman Li family, Li Fengyao, the wielder of the bow, Frostkill. As for the first deacon of the Four Seas Business Alliance, Fang Chong, the good friend of Cheng Gung Sheng, the outstanding descendant of the Lin family of Nanyao. These were all secondary. The Tian family couldn't bear the consequences. At least, the Tian family couldn't bear the consequences now. Go and ask the manor what happened and why he's going crazy. Tian Huanzhong completely lost his composure and roared angrily. At this moment, in the Fubai Tower, the naked and barefoot Tian Anping looked up at the sky. The night outside the Seven Stars Valley was not as dark as the valley. The Big Dipper was not the only star in the sky. Of course, there weren't many stars that could be seen from the narrow well of the Fubai Tower. It could even be said that there were very few stars. The ray of light that intercepted the Seven Stars Tower's massive star power shot straight over. Like an arrow, it directly pierced the circle on the roof of the Fubai Tower. Then it stopped there. How could the light stop? This inconceivable thing actually happened. The ray of light no longer extended forward. It was as if passing through the circle was its entire purpose. It had reached its destination after a long journey. It's as if my heart has been pierced. Tian Anping covered his heart with one hand and whispered softly. He seemed to be in pain. His brows were tightly knitted, and his expression was unbearable. But his eyes were fixed on the sky without blinking. All the questions in the world, all the answers were hidden in the sky. He thought he searched, so he smiled. Tian Anping casually picked up a shirt from the ground and put it on. Those heavy bruises and wounds were all temporarily covered. It was as if they had never existed. He stood up and looked up at the sky. I see. There was a pure joy on his face like a child. It's wonderful. He sighed. At this time, the noise outside the tower also came. Tian Omping, do you know what you're doing? Why are you acting crazy at such a critical moment? Are you going to destroy the Tian family? Your uncle Huanzhong is going crazy in the Seven Stars Valley. What are you trying to do? All kinds of reprimanding voices, complaining voices, voices of fear. These people, this world was really noisy. Tian Anping didn't like noise. In the Fubai Tower, he stood up straight, stopped smiling, and his expression became flat. His thin lips were slightly opened, and his voice had already traveled outside the tower. Tell Tian Huanzhong, if he makes any more noise, I'll kill him. In an instant, there was silence. The people outside the tower were obviously not satisfied, but no one could express this dissatisfaction. The sound of leaving footsteps, the sound of rushing wind, and the whispers of what to do and so on. Mediocre thinking. Tian Anping twitched the corner of his mouth. Obviously, he didn't intend to explain anything. He raised his head, looked at the sky, and slowly closed his eyes. In the instant he closed his eyes, the ray of light that came horizontally was annihilated at the same time. The annihilation of the light was faster than it had happened. The strange scene of an arrow piercing the heart on the roof of the Fubai Tower suddenly disappeared. Tian Anping closed his eyes, and his mind had already leaped into a mysterious place. This place had originally rejected him. He had never truly seen it, but he still found that place. And he broke the door and entered. Outside the Fubai Tower. We're saved. It's recovered. I can finally be at ease. Such a voice sounded intermittently. Breathing, sighing, and extremely soft complaints. The Fubai Tower always existed in silence. Inside and outside the tower, two worlds. A wall separated them like a natural moat. Chapter 423. Tian Anping's mind appeared in a bright galaxy. There were ancient mottled stone platforms shuttling back and forth in front of and behind him. Although it was just a glimpse, Tian Anping still caught some small information. There was a battle. There were people fighting on those stone platforms. Every star in the dazzling Milky Way was moving along some sort of mysterious trajectory. Everything he saw was filled with complex and abundant information. Some rules, some elements. Connecting illusion and reality. Connecting the real world and this place. Evolving the galaxy, the growth of all things. Everything that existed forever or died. What a beautiful imagination. What a complicated structure. Interesting, too interesting. It was far beyond those vulgar structures. This was the great illusionary land. No wonder it caused such a huge uproar. Tian Anping enjoyed it. He had always been curious about this place. As one of the top families in Qi, the Tian family of days was not ignorant about the great illusionary land. In fact, the top forces in the real world might not have a detailed understanding of the great illusionary land, but they at least knew about its existence. Just like during the battle with Qi Yang, the great illusionary land was directly covered. Or it could be said that the great illusionary land intentionally avoided Qi's military operations to avoid being targeted. In short, Jiang Wang could not communicate with the great illusionary land at that time. On one hand, the top forces could completely cover the great illusionary land. On the other hand, for a superpower like Qi Yang, no forces could spread their influence so far without the consent of Qi Ting. The range of the great illusionary land was no exception, unless they wanted a war. The slots for the great illusionary land were opened randomly. There was no fixed allocation of slots. Of course, the fairness of this random opening must be monitored. Absolute fairness was the prerequisite for the great illusionary land to have a bright future. The unlucky one was that Tian Anping did not get a slot. The great illusionary land was only open to a small area. The majority of people did not get a slot. Without a slot and a moon key, they could not participate in the great illusionary land. There was nothing to complain about because it was the truth. Most people in the world did not even know about the existence of the great illusionary land. The ignorant were not only fearless, they had nothing. Even emotions like jealousy were like rootless water that could not grow. But after tonight, the situation changed. The rules were challenged and even overturned. Tian Anping had observed the fluctuations of the grand illusionary land by himself and deciphered the trajectory of the lunar star's power. Furthermore, with the opening of the Seven Stars Tower, the power of the Seven Stars flourished while the power of the Moon Star was suppressed, intercepting the boundless star power for his own use. He directly pierced through the existence of the great illusionary realm and personally entered it. Tian Anping had a joyful smile on his face as he traveled through the resplendent galaxy. The Sword Discourse Arena was a bridge that spanned across the galaxy and connected various places in the great illusionary land. On the other hand, he was crossing the Milky Way with his own body, so he had to pay a huge price for every single moment. He couldn't maintain this for too long, but he looked around leisurely, not showing the slightest sense of urgency of limited time. He was calm and at ease, as if he had returned to his own home and not barged into an unfamiliar place. His line of sight shifted to the countless grotesque and dazzling galaxies. He felt the aura of this mysterious place and imprinted a few fleeting glimpses into his heart. Tian Anping smiled. "See you tomorrow." His figure then turned into specks of light and dissipated. The resplendent galaxies continued to surge, and the Sword Discourse Arena still whistled to and fro. It was as if this abrupt figure had never appeared in the galaxy. But he, Tian Anping, had already been here. If the cultivator with the moon key entering the great illusionary land was a visit after receiving an invitation, then Tian Anping was the person who kicked the door and entered. He couldn't kick the door and enter every time because the Seven Stars Tower wasn't open every day, and there wasn't such boundless star power for him to use every time. Also, the same method might not work in the great illusionary land again. This kind of loophole that wasn't a loophole would definitely be remedied. This was something that the rules allowed and would definitely continue. But for Tian Anping, as long as he entered the great illusionary land and understood more of the operating rules, the moon key would no longer be a problem. The next time he entered, he would bring the key and swagger in. At the same time, in a mysterious place, a solemn voice asked, "Should we interfere?" Another faint voice replied, "It was originally a random entry. He was able to enter because of his ability." The solemn voice seemed to be very dissatisfied. "Our house, the master can enter, the guest can enter. How can thieves and robbers enter? No matter if it's a thief or a robber or a guest, you or me. To this heaven and earth, who isn't a passerby? Heaven and earth don't care about who comes and who goes." The faint voice warned, "You must maintain reverence for the rules of the great illusionary land. We have no right to interfere. When you have the intention to interfere, our danger has also begun. When you take action, our destruction has already arrived." Clang, the bell outside the sky rang for a long time. But in the Seven Stars Valley, the star power that was suddenly cut off surged again, like a layer of star sand sliding down the surface of the Seven Stars Tower. The pattering sound was dreamy and illusory. The Seven Stars Tower stabilized, and the overly illusory appearance became much more solid. At some point, the Seven Stars Tower disappeared in a flash, and the jade spoon, embedded in the sky, also disappeared. The night sky here was as dark as ink, and there was no longer any starlight. Tian Huanzhang's heart was finally at ease. He even found a reclining chair and lay down exhausted. With a sense of exhaustion after escaping death, he looked up at the place where the Seven Stars Tower disappeared, waiting for its return. This was a forest world that seemed to be boundless. Walking on the thick, rotten leaves, there was a feeling of weightlessness. As far as the eye could see, there were giant trees up to 100 feet tall everywhere, extending into the distance as if they were the support of the sky. There were also like giant umbrellas that covered the sky, but the sky was still stubbornly shining through the gaps between the branches and leaves, so that this place would not completely fall into darkness. The environment was dim, but there was still light after all. Jiang Wang once saw a giant tree that was claimed to be 7,000 feet tall, during his long trek from the Yun Nation to Qi. It was worshipped as a god by the local people, but it didn't seem to be rare in this place. After entering the so-called Seven Stars Tower's secret realm, one would not appear on a certain floor of a certain building, but in a certain vast world. Jiang Wang had already learned about this from the information. The information of the Four Seas Merchant Alliance and Li Fengyao's supplement based on the information of the city destroying marquee establishment was a very complete set of information. But the secret realm of the Seven Stars Tower was rarely the same each time, and past experience could not be directly used. Li Fengyao had directly marked it as only for reference. Use it when appropriate. If that set of information was taken as dogma, it would be a path to death. Even though he had entered here with a certain amount of information, Jiang Wang's attitude was still the same as when he first entered the Tianfu secret realm. There was nothing wrong with being careful. Since entering this place, Jiang Wang had not encountered any other Xiuzha. Walking alone in the dim forest, other than the sound of his feet stepping on dead branches and leaves, there was only the sound of the wind hitting the leaves. It was not romantic and leisurely. In the enormous forest, there was a bone-chilling sense of eeriness. The word eeriness was used to describe the feeling of darkness in the forest. After walking for about half an incense stick's worth of time, the monotonous world finally changed. The third sound that Jiang Wang heard suddenly sounded from far away. It was an extremely strange howl. It was frightening. P.S. 1,000,000 words. It was as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. In the first sleepless nights, my thought was, no matter what, write 1,000,000 words. To give myself, and to give an explanation to the readers who have always supported me. Now this goal has been achieved. Chapter 424. The sound was hard to describe. It was cold and sharp. Jiang Wang had never heard a sound like this before. Moreover, it gave him an indescribable sense of fear. Was it a vicious beast? A demonic beast? Or some unknown monster? Jiang Wang listened attentively, but the sound suddenly disappeared again. However, the alarm bells in Jiang Wang's heart had undoubtedly rung. He couldn't walk around aimlessly like this anymore. Jiang Wang flipped his hand and extinguished the white light in his palm. This was the secret technique, the treasure light mantra. It could detect treasures. Obviously, he hadn't gained anything during this time. Back in Qingyang town, before Hu Xiaoming died, he used this secret technique as the prize for Jiang Wang to help him complete his final revenge. However, in reality, there were very few opportunities to use this secret technique. There were treasures everywhere in Linzi, but unfortunately, they all had owners. So what if the treasure light mantra reacted? However, the first purpose of this trip to the Qixing Pavilion's secret realm was to obtain life-extending treasures and make up for his regrets. Therefore, before entering the secret realm, Jiang Wang specially put all his recent accumulated strength into the treasure light mantra in an attempt to deduce and upgrade it. However, this kind of unorthodox secret technique probably consumed more strength, or perhaps the treasure light mantra itself was extremely special. The treasure light mantra didn't change in the slightest even after using up all his recent accumulated strength. Of course, it hadn't been long since the last time he used it, so he didn't accumulate much strength during this time. He didn't know how vast this Linhai was. When he pressed his hand on the giant tree next to him, he felt a kind of rough touch. It was reasonable to say that such a giant tree was a small world with its own system. There should be many life forms attached to the tree. However, Jiang Wang was certain that he couldn't find even a single insect. If one said that there were no life forms here, the strange howl just now was clearly a counterexample. However, if one said that this place was full of vitality, Jiang Wang clearly only came into contact with the giant trees themselves. Everything was so contrary to common sense. Jiang Wang's past life experience was overturned here. He thought for a moment, then leaped up and carefully flew to the top of the tree. Rashly flying up in an unknown environment was undoubtedly a risky move. However, compared to randomly bumping around in the sea of trees, This risk was worth it. What kind of concept was a giant tree that was thousands of feet tall? Compared to the tree itself, people were no more conspicuous than ants. This was also one of the reasons why Jiang Wang dared to take risks. After flying a certain distance, Jiang Wang would carefully observe his surroundings before continuing upward. Even though the wind was calm and the trees were quiet, nothing unexpected happened. Be in awe of danger and be cautious of the unknown. Light finally appeared in front of his eyes, and his field of vision instantly widened. When Jiang Wang flew to the top of the tree, he didn't stick his head out. Instead, he stood on the branch and hid himself among the leaves. At this position, the wind became very strong. The treetops were swaying faintly, giving people the illusion that the giant tree was on the verge of collapse. There were no unexpected discoveries, and the treetop was peaceful and quiet. It was as if the strange howls they heard earlier were just some kind of auditory hallucination. The giant tree that Jiang Wang chose was not the tallest one, but standing on the top of the tree, she could already see into the distance. It was no different from what she saw under the tree. In the distance, there was only an endless stretch of trees. It was just that she could only see the trunk of the tree from where she was, but she could see even further from here. She could see that the treetops extended to the horizon. At least, she couldn't see the end of it. The wind whistled and the treetops swayed back and forth, undulating like the waves of the sea. Some experts could gather the astral winds for their own use, but Jiang Wang had never been close to a height where he could come into contact with the astral winds. Flying itself required Tao energy, and the higher one flew, the greater the consumption. With his current strength, he was still far from being qualified to explore the limits of the sky. But the wind at this height was already very irritable. Sometimes elemental energy had emotions. In different environments and under different conditions, it would have different reactions. Following the emotions, either to appease or to change, could cause the Tao technique to have different results. This was what Jiang Wang realized when he almost drowned in the great illusionary land. He felt that the water that wrapped around him seemed to embody the emotions of the teenager in the luxurious robe. This might be the reason why the teenager in the luxurious robe was so powerful. At this moment, the wind elemental energy here gave Jiang Wang the feeling that it was irritable. The sky was dark blue, without any clouds or other colors. Only a distant ball of light hung in the sky. The light that penetrated the gaps between the leaves came from this ball of light. Jiang Wang only called it a ball of light because he was certain that it was not the sun. At most, it was a projection of the sun, or some kind of refraction. Jiang Wang used to go to morning and night classes every day, attracting purple clouds in the morning and rosy clouds in the evening, so he was very familiar with the sun. This ball of light gave him a completely different feeling. The 7-star tower's information did not mention this. In fact, Jiang Wang was more inclined to believe that this ball of light was one of the 7 stars of the Big Dipper. But he did not have a complete star map in his mind, so he could not determine which one it was. After all, the sky was empty at this moment. Jiang Yan, do you think that ball of light above us is the sun? I don't think so, Jiang Wang asked in the Tantian Palace. This peaceful forest made Jiang Wang, who was used to being alone, feel somewhat unbearable. He even tried to strike up a conversation with Jiang Yan. Jiang Yan? Jiang Yan? Jiang Yan? Jiang Wang asked a series of questions. He even shook the soaring dragon Dao vein in the Tantian Palace. Alioth, Jiang Yan's attitude was very cold, but he still responded. Had his cultivation reached a critical juncture? What had happened to him in the Netherworld Candle? What was he secretly doing? Sometimes, Jiang Wang really wanted to enter the Netherworld Candle as a soul to take a look, but the risk was too great, so he could only imagine. Jiang Wang could not do anything about Jiang Yan other than not letting down his guard. But there was no doubt that self-improvement was the way to solve everything. Jiang Yan's thoughts could not be determined, but his knowledge was worth affirming. If he said that the ball of light in the sky was the Alioth star, then it was very likely. If the 7-star tower was divided into 7 worlds, and all the participants were scattered in different worlds, then it was very reasonable for him to enter the 5th star of the Big Dipper, Alioth star, as the 30th star of the Earth Fiend star. Alioth star was also known as Lianjin. Since ancient times, Lianjin has been the most difficult to distinguish. It was said that this star had many changes and was difficult to predict. Based on this analysis, dealing with what happened in the Alioth star world might require even more ability to distinguish. Jiang Yin had no interest in chatting, and Jiang Wang did not dare to be distracted. The tree rings and even the position of the leaves could be used to determine the direction. Jiang Wang carefully observed the nearby trees. They did not point to anything out of the ordinary. In other words, the direction could be determined. Of course, it was north, in the 7-star tower's secret realm. If one wanted to explore any secrets, there was no reason to go south. After silently confirming the direction, Jiang Wang landed back on the ground. In this unknown place that was different from what was recorded, it was very important to conserve Dao energy. He walked north for a long time, but did not encounter a second living being. He did not even hear that strange howl again. Crack, crack. The sound of breaking leaves and branches continued like this. Crack, crack. This maddening dryness and dullness did not shake Jiang Wang's resolve at all. On the contrary, he maintained a high level of vigilance from beginning to end. Because of this, when the branch under his feet suddenly bounced up, Sauvignon yearning reacted first. Whoosh! Frostlight like a waterfall. In the dim forest, it was as if a moon had been torn apart. Chapter 425. The two halves of a snake corpse separated in front of Jiang Wang's eyes. This was a snake that looked no different from an ordinary tree branch. If it was only similar in color, Jiang Wang wouldn't have overlooked it. Not only did this snake look like a withered branch, but it also had no signs of life before it attacked. Only when it attacked did it instantly become ferocious and terrifying, as fast as lightning. But in the end, it wasn't faster than Jiang Wang's sword. In fact, Jiang Wang had already reacted when he felt the slippery feeling from the bottom of his boots. Facing the sudden attack, Jiang Wang was even somewhat inexplicably happy. He finally encountered a living creature. The deathly silence along the way almost made people think that there were only trees in this sea of trees. But this joy quickly disappeared, because the sound of dense rustling could be heard from all directions. As far as the eye could see, in front and behind, on the ground, and even on the trees, many withered branches were all moving. This kind of snake, for the time being, it was called withered branch snake, was an ordinary withered branch when it was still. If one didn't touch it, one wouldn't be able to tell the difference at all. When it attacked, it was very fast, and that kind of speed could completely penetrate a water buffalo. And the number was so terrifying that Jiang Wang immediately felt as if he was in a snake cave. He had been quiet all along the way, as if this was a trap set by this group of withered branch snakes. If this was a trap, he had already fallen into it this time. If this was a trap, what was more terrifying than this kind of hiding ability was the intelligence they displayed. In the face of this situation, Jiang Wang's heart was as calm as still water. With a flick of his fingertips, a faintly discernible flower that looked like it was carved out of jade floated onto the corpse of the previous withered branch snake. This was the poison-swallowing flower evolved from the poison-swallowing stinger. Its grade wasn't high, but it wasn't used at this time to detoxify the poison. Jiang Wang first wanted to determine whether this withered branch snake was poisonous and then decide how to deal with it. As for that extremely beautiful poison-swallowing flower, almost as soon as it touched the corpse of the withered branch snake, it was already completely black. Then, in an instant, the petals fell and the branches withered. Not only was it poisonous, but the toxicity was so strong. The poison-swallowing flower was born to swallow poison, but it couldn't last a breath. He couldn't be bitten by any withered branch snake. They couldn't make too much of a commotion because they didn't know what other dangers were lurking in the forest. Daoist techniques like the 8 tones flame sparrow were likely to attract attention, just like the owner of the strange howl from before. Jiang Wang was enlightened. In the next moment, those withered branch snakes had already reached a suitable position to attack. As a result, the densely packed dead twig snakes instantly filled the sky like a rain of arrows. They attacked from all directions, from top to bottom, left to right, front to back. Clang, it was similar to the sound of metal clashing. The withered twig snake that was shooting towards them collided with a silver circle. Jiang Wang made a circle with his sword. Thanks to the battle that took place in the great illusionary land, Jiang Wang completed the circle sword technique in the all-pervasive water flow. At that time, he had forcefully created a vacuum in the water. At this moment, he had also created a safe space in the midst of the dead twig snakes that were raining down like arrows. Within 3 feet of the long sword, the wind cannot enter. The rain could not enter. Snakes cannot enter. The enemy must not advance. Clang, 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 clang. The sound of the withered branch snakes colliding with the circle sword rang out crazily. They were densely packed like raindrops hitting banana leaves. The circle sword technique at this moment was even more difficult than in the great illusionary land. Water was all-pervasive, but the pressure of water was fixed. The moment the circle sword technique was propped up, it stabilized. Under the attack of the withered branch snakes, the strength of each snake was different. There were countless variations depending on the angle and distance of the attack. This caused the pressure they brought to the sword body to fluctuate. Whether it was forward or backward, faster or slower, Jiang Wang's sword would deviate, and the circle sword technique could no longer be established. On the other hand, in order to stabilize the circle sword technique, one had to react in an instant and make subtle adjustments. This was a terrifying reaction frequency. Jiang Wang relied entirely on the instincts of his body to complete it. He relied on his years of swordsmanship and his instincts that were almost one with his looks. This was a challenge to break through the limits, but Jiang Wang also prepared the flame meteor escape technique at the same time. Once the circle sword technique could not hold on, he would immediately use the flame meteor escape technique to leave the battlefield. As for whether the flame meteor escape technique could successfully break through, Jiang Wang was not completely sure, because these withered branch snakes were really too many and too dense. There was almost no space left for the flame meteor escape technique to pass through. If he was unlucky enough to bump into them while flying, it would be a disaster in an instant. Don't listen to the sound of leaves breaking through the forest. Why not sing and move slowly? It was a kind of leisurely and indifferent life that people yearned for. However, the sound of leaves breaking through the forest was urgent. There was an ambush on all sides, and the killing intent was biting cold. Who could move calmly? Jiang Wang was surrounded by more and more withered branch snakes, but his circle sword technique was getting smaller and smaller. 3 feet in front of him, 2.5 feet. However, when Zhang Xianxi could not protect 1 foot in front of him, it was time for Jiang Wang to use the flame meteor escape technique. At this time, he had to admit that he had made the wrong response. In the face of unknown danger, he had made a careless choice. He should have seized the opportunity to clear the field with the 8-tone flame sparrow and used the most powerful Dao technique at this stage to clean up the withered branch snakes. As for whether it would attract other dangers at the juncture of life and death, who would care about the dangers afterward? Now, he had chosen to use his sword to deal with them. In fact, it was obvious that he had underestimated the strength of the withered branch snake's attacks. When the circle sword technique could not hold on, he could only rely on the escape technique, flame meteor escape technique. He had let the situation reach this point and place his life on the line. This was a mistake that Jiang Wang could not bear. Jiang Anan was still waiting for him in the Yun Nation. How could he make such a mistake? 100, 1,000, 10,000. It was impossible to count how many withered branch snakes there were. Along the way, he did not discover anything. The withered branch snake's concealment ability was too strong, and he, Jiang Wang, was indeed not sharp enough. At the very least, he needed an investigative Dao technique to help him find the way. These mistakes would need to be made up for in the future when he reviewed the situation. If there was a future, Jiang Wang had previously felt that this forest was too deathly still, but at this time, he only felt that the creatures were so dense that it was disgusting. The dense collisions did not stop for a moment. Crackle, 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 crackle. The snake corpses fell to the ground with a crackle. Dang, 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 dang. Dang, 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 dang. The withered branch snakes advanced dauntlessly and collided with the sword circle. Jiang Wang was like a person who did not prepare an umbrella and suddenly encountered a rainstorm in an open space without any cover. Other than getting drenched and falling seriously ill, there seemed to be no other choice. He did not know how much time had passed, but everything seemed to be endless. Under the continuous collisions and tremors, the web between his thumb and forefinger was already dripping with blood. His hands were almost not his own. It was completely supported by a strong willpower that he was relying on instinct to wield the sword. The Sauvignon Slayer, which had the appearance of a famous weapon, faintly let out a mournful cry. The Sauvignon Slayer was a sword, not a shield. It could easily cut gold and break jade, but it was not good for bearing heavy weight. The person and the sword seemed to have reached their limits. However, when the sword circle shrank to 1 foot, it did not shrink any further. No matter how the withered branch snakes attacked, that 1 centimeter distance was like a natural moat that could not be crossed, because Jiang Wang was very clear that if he shrank even 1 centimeter, his life and death would be in the hands of luck. And Jiang Wang had never been a person who believed in luck. He relied on his hands and feet, not his life. Without relying on anything, he relied on himself. The sound suddenly stopped. The arrow rain, formed by the withered branch snakes, instantly stopped. Then there was another rustling sound. After leaving behind a large number of snake corpses, the remaining withered branch snakes swam away. Only a silver-white, sword-shaped circle was left behind. The sword circle was 1 foot long, and the sword circle was 1 foot long. Chapter 426. The circle of sword light seemed to solidify, and Jiang Wang was trapped in a state of oblivion. The sword formed a circle. Wherever the sword reached, the wind and rain could not be stopped. The pressure on the sword circle suddenly disappeared, and he continued the sword circle instinctively under the inertia of his body. Then he suddenly woke up. He held the sword motionlessly. The snake corpses were piled up like mountains, and he stood in the only concave in the center. Soreness, pain, all kinds of feelings collided at this time, and the 1 foot sword circle that had been condensed to the extreme had become his strongest defensive sword move at this stage. But he finally defended it. Jiang Wang did not have time to breathe a sigh of relief. Suddenly, swoosh, 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 swoosh. The dead branch snakes that had just swam away rushed back again. The first burst of energy, the second burst of energy, and the third burst of energy. This group of dead branch snakes actually knew how to avoid the sharp edge and then make a comeback. This was even more terrifying than the poison that made the poison-swallowing flowers wither instantly, because this showed that the dead branch snakes were indeed intelligent. In other words, these dead branch snakes were controlled by some kind of intelligent existence. The previous trapped in the snake encirclement was not an accident, but a trap set by the dead branch snakes. What Jiang Wang had to face was not only the vicious beasts and poisonous creatures that did not think, but only acted on instinct. After the dead branch snakes swam over, they did not hesitate at all. They all bounced up and once again shot out like a rain of arrows. And once again trapped in the center of the dead branch snake siege, Jiang Wang did not form a circle with the sword again. Instead, he immediately returned the sword to its sheath. His 10 fingers were like flowers as he formed seals. His left hand was still intact, but his right hand was badly mutilated. Every movement was a heart-wrenching pain. But other than a slight frown, Jiang Wang did not have any other expression, and the movements of his hand did not change at all. Those who easily cried for their parents were, because they had a father to cry to and a mother to cry to. He was also afraid of pain, but he had long understood that it was useless to cry out in pain. Defeated, the densely packed dead branch snakes all pounced on Jiangwang. Chirp, 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 chirp. Clang, 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 woo-woo, bang, bang. More dense and faster flame sparrows suddenly exploded with Jiangwang as the center. 8 notes rang out in unison, and the flame sparrow exploded continuously. After a Dao technique, everything within 50 steps of Jiangwang was instantly cleared. To be precise, all the dead branches, leaves, and snakes were gone. However, the giant trees that were affected were not damaged at all. This was one of the reasons why Jiangwang did not choose the 8-tone flame sparrow at first. In the forest sea, using a powerful fire element Taoist technique would inevitably lead to unpredictable consequences. However, it turned out that due to certain restrictions, his explosive flame sparrow had no effect on these giant trees at all. It didn't even leave a scorch mark, let alone cause a fire. As for the dead twig snakes, 50 steps away, they were obviously much more sparse. Quite a few withered branch snakes were swimming back and forth outside the range of 50 steps. They seemed to be hesitating about what to do next. However, Jiangwang did not hesitate. Bang, 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 bang. He had already made the best use of his time and used the flame meteor to pass through the gap and quickly leave this place. 200 steps, 500 steps, 1 mile, 3 miles, 5 miles. Jiangwang sped all the way to the north until he clearly felt that his Dao energy was starting to run out of energy. Only then did he descend. The flame meteor was not a long-distance escape technique. Maintaining such a high-speed movement meant that his current limit was about 50 miles. However, he had to maintain enough Dao energy reserves to support a battle at all times. The reason why he had left so decisively was because he was worried that the noise created by the 8-tone flame sparrow would attract danger, and also because of the dead twig snakes themselves. Behind this group of dead twig snakes, there was definitely an intelligent existence, or perhaps a snake king. However, Jiangwang was not confident that he would be able to find it. For a species like the dead twig snakes that were born with powerful concealment abilities, the snake king would only hide even deeper. Moreover, it had intelligence, so it would be even more impossible for it to foolishly appear different from the other dead twig snakes. Jiangwang had no need to waste his time with a group of dead twig snakes in this foreign world of Alioth, especially when the other party was so dangerous. Before he had enough confidence, it was best to leave. Only after escaping the dead twig snake's encirclement could he have the time to treat his wounds. The main thing was that the web between his thumb and index finger had been smashed by the repeated shocks. After applying some medicine, it was enough to bandage it. The cloth used to bandage the wounds was cut from clean clothes in the storage box. He just had to pay attention to not affect the flexibility of his fingers when bandaging the wounds. For Jiangwang, this was not difficult. It was something he was used to. After experiencing the ambush of the dead twig snakes, his attitude towards this forest sea became even more cautious. He even maintained his guard against the giant trees that formed the forest sea. Wood breeds fire. This was the law of nature. The fact that the 8-tone flame sparrow had covered the trees without any damage was in itself a very strange thing. However, if there was really something wrong with these trees in this boundless forest sea, it seemed that only death awaited him. Of course, in Jiangwang's understanding of life, there was no such thing as await death. After confirming the direction again, he continued to head north. Even if he walked to the end of the road, it was still better than going around in circles and being stuck in the same place forever. This time, the silence of the forest sea did not last for long. After walking for a while, the sound of something breaking through the air came from afar. Jiangwang dodged behind a giant tree. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 figures, should be human figures, were running through the forest at a very fast speed. In this boundless forest sea, besides beasts, there were also humans. Jiangwang held his breath and observed the situation. Thud! It was a sound like a bird pecking at wood. An arrow. No, a a total of 3 arrows. One of them was nailed to a giant tree within Jiang Wang's line of sight, causing Jiang Wang's pupils to dilate slightly. It should be known that although the giant trees in this forest sea were of different species, and Jiang Wang did not know the names of all of them, they had one thing in common, which was that they were extremely tough and had astonishing defense. Even Jiang Wang's 8-tone flame sparrow could not cause damage to these giant trees. However, this arrow was deeply embedded in the tree. The second and third arrows were embedded in the soil, shaking and trembling. They were embedded in the road ahead, causing the sprinting figure to stop there, not far in front of Jiang Wang. It seemed that these two people were chasing after each other. The person who stopped in front of Jiang Wang had a stronger physique. His clothes were very strange, not made of leather, not made of hemp, not made of silk, but rather looked like they were made of grass. His upper body was half naked, and his lower body seemed to be wearing a skirt. However, looking at his muscles and Adam's apple, he was clearly a man. In short, Jiang Wang could be considered to have traveled to many countries and seen many things, but he had never seen such clothes before. This man also noticed Jiang Wang, but he only glanced at him for a moment, then proudly turned his head to look back at his opponent. Jiang Wang did not understand why this person was so proud when he was being chased all over the place. He also did not know who they were, but it was none of his business anyway, so he decided to observe first. "Qing Qishu, you can't run away." The pursuer stopped and shouted loudly. His pronunciation was a bit awkward, perhaps it was closer to the language of Jing, but Jiang Wang could still understand. The languages of Jing, Qi, and other powerful countries were more popular within their sphere of influence. Most people who had traveled to other countries could understand a little. The person who shouted was holding a short bow with an arrow on it, ready to shoot. Humph! The strong man, named Qing Qishu, took out a wooden shield from somewhere and held it in front of him with one hand. He said in high spirits, "Qing Jui, I'm just going easy on you. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? Look at what shield I'm holding in my hand." Whoosh! The person named Qing Jui did not reply, but directly drew his bow and shot. Thud! Qing Qishu's disdainful gaze even had time to sweep past Jiang Wang, as if to say, "You've learned something, country bumpkin?" Then he returned to Qing Jui, shook the unmoved shield, and said proudly, "This greenwood shield of mine has been blessed by the dragon god. Its defense is formidable. How can you break it with your arrows?" Jiang Wang was a bit confused and could not help but interrupt, "But he didn't shoot your shield." Qing Qishu was stunned. He looked down and saw that his knee was bleeding. Chapter 427. Qing Qishu tossed his shield aside and jumped up while hugging his knees. Compared to Qing Qishu, Qing Nine Leaf was much thinner, but he was also much calmer. When he heard Jiang Wang's voice, his first reaction was to take a few steps back and change direction so that his arrow was aimed at Jiang Wang. "Who are you?" Without waiting for Jiang Wang's reply, he said to Qing Qishu, "Do you know him? Where did you find this helper? How dare you ask an outsider for help when it's a clan hunting event?" His voice was very stern toward the end of his question. Hiss. Qing Qishu was in great pain. He kept sucking in cold breaths. At the same time, he replied, "I don't know him." "You don't know him, yet you're looking down on me?" Jiang Wang rolled his eyes silently. He was certain that these two were not cultivators who participated in the 7-star Pavilion secret realm. In that case, were they people who originally lived in this world illuminated by the Alioth star? Or were they the descendants of cultivators who were lost in the 7-star Pavilion's secret realm? Both of their surnames were Qing, and they were talking about a clan hunting event. Their pronunciation was also very strange. In any case, they must be from the same clan. Moreover, they did not hold back when they fought. This meant that this hunting event was not a simple spar. Jiang Wang quickly calculated in his mind. He kept moving his feet slightly to escape the arrow's lock. However, Qing Nine Leaf kept his bow aimed at him. "Please leave immediately." Jiang Wang pressed his sword and asked, "Where do you think I should go?" He felt that this person was crazy. "I went through so much trouble to get here. And you want me to leave with just a sentence? Go back to where you came from. Don't make me warn you again. Jiang Wang still had lingering fear when he thought about the dead branch snakes he escaped from. The place I came from is very dangerous. Qing Nine Leaf raised his bow. His hostility was obvious. Where did you come from? Jiang Wang did not answer immediately this time. Instead, he looked at Qing Qishu in surprise. Why aren't you running away? Although he did not think he was a match for a blue nine-leaf cultivator, it was clear that the two of them were enemies and were fighting to the death. There was no reason for him not to recruit helpers. If they were to fight, he would have the advantage of numbers. However, you'd better answer Yi Er's question honestly, Qing Qishu said fiercely. However, this solemn expression only lasted for a moment before he immediately grimaced in pain again. Jiang Wang was shocked. He shot your knee, is hurt, and you're still on his side? What kind of relationship is this? Love? He wanted to stab this guy called Qing Qishu with his sword and see if the more he hurt him, the more obedient he would be. However, Qing Nine Leaf was already at his limit. If he did not answer, he would have to face his attack. Moreover, looking at the situation, it was very likely that he was being ganged up on by two people. As the saying goes, when you're out in the world, harmony is the most important thing. Bah! The main reason Jiang Wang didn't want to start a conflict with them was that there was clearly a tribe behind the two of them, and this tribe was clearly a sitting tiger in this world illuminated by Aliyah's star. If he killed two of them, it was very likely that he would provoke a group of them. If he could avoid conflict, it was best not to fight. Hence, Jiang Wang smiled politely. He pointed in the direction he came from. I came from that direction. Qing Nine Leaf frowned. 2 emerald leaves were stuck to his eyebrows. They trembled slightly as he frowned. It was a comical sight. Jiang Wang wondered what kind of makeup style it was. Hiding place of snakes? He was puzzled. However, he reacted in the next moment. He was furious. How dare you lie to me? He loosened his grip, and the arrow left the bowstring. Whoosh! The short string vibrated, and a sharp sound rang in the air. When the arrows were shot, Jiang Wang's attention was on the person. He only noticed the arrow now. It was a wooden arrow, a pure wooden arrow. It was completely made of wood. Even the arrowhead was not made of iron. It could even be said that it was a sharpened branch. However, it was sharp, fast, and steady. It had a simple and ancient ferocious aura. It was right in front of him. Sword light shone, covering the area 3 feet in front of him. Jiang Wang immediately drew a circle with his sword. It wasn't that he didn't want to cut the arrow in half. It wasn't that he didn't catch the arrow's trajectory. However, the moment he drew his sword, his inner vigilance made him choose to draw a circle with his sword for complete defense. He wouldn't forget that just now, Qing Qishu had blocked with his powerful wooden shield. Based on the trajectory, he should have been able to block the arrow. However, in the end, the arrow had bypassed the shield and pierced through Qing Qishu's knee. He didn't want to be careless about archery in this strange world. Clang! The wooden arrow hit the circle of sword. It sounded like metal clashing. The sword light dissipated, and the wooden arrow fell to the ground. Jiang Wang's prediction was correct. The arrow's landing point was indeed different from its initial trajectory. Although he didn't know how it was done, an impenetrable defense was clearly a good way to deal with this kind of archery. Qing Nine Leaf looked shocked. He clearly didn't expect Jiang Wang to be able to block this arrow. Ah! Qing Qishu yelled. So powerful. Was this person an idiot? Whose side was he on? Jiang Wang realized that he couldn't see through this strange fellow with all his limbs. He held his sword and stared at Qing Nine Leaf, who looked slightly more normal, and said, I don't know where the snake hiding ground is, but I did come from that direction. I didn't lie to you. If you attack me again, I won't hold back. Qing Nine Leaf fell silent. It didn't matter if he had lied to him or not. What was important was that his arrow had been blocked. Since his arrow had been blocked, what could he do even if he had lied to him? He, Qing Nine Leaf, wasn't an idiot. It hadn't been easy for him to defeat Xiang Shou. Was he in a hurry to die? Ah! At this moment, Qing Qishu said, if you can block Qing Yezi's arrow, then it's not impossible for you to cross the snake hiding ground. After all, this is an archery technique that even I couldn't defend against in a moment of carelessness. He looked at Qing Nine Leaf and said, Qing Yezi, he might not be lying. Where did this self-righteous and logical self-righteousness come from? Qing Nine Leaf was too embarrassed to speak. How could his arrow compare to the danger of crossing the snake hiding ground? Jiang Wang wanted to ease the atmosphere. He took the initiative to explain, if the snake hiding ground you're talking about is the place where the snakes are hidden, then I did come from there. There are many snakes in the shape of dead branches there. It's very difficult to detect them. It took me a lot of effort to escape. Qing Nine Leaf and Qing Qishu exchanged a glance. Then Qing Nine Leaf said, then it's the snake hiding ground. They're the most sinister assassins here. As it turned out, the snake hiding ground was the snake hiding ground. It lived up to its name. When a snake hiding ground was hidden, it was difficult to detect. So, can you put down your bow now? Jiang Wang sheathed his sword to show his sincerity. I bear no enmity toward you. Qing Nine Leaf shook his head. No, the hunt isn't over yet. However, he didn't stare at Jiang Wang anymore. Instead, he took out another wooden arrow, turned it around, and pointed it at Qing Qishu. Jiang Wang fell silent for a moment. This person is surprisingly old-fashioned. Also, didn't want to team up against me just now? What kind of clan is this? I really can't understand them. Ah, Qing Qishu shouted, that doesn't count. This outsider distracted me. Otherwise, with your mediocre shooting skills, do you think you can hit me? Let's do it again. Let's do it again after I've recovered. That's your problem. Qing Nine Leaf knocked the arrow on the bowstring methodically. Wait. Although Jiang Wang was confused, he still forced himself to ask, I want to ask, what is this hunt for? Qing Nine Leaf fell silent for a while. Perhaps he was wary of Jiang Wang's strength. He replied, we fight fairly. I'll cut off his head, or he'll cut off my head. Clearly, this so-called hunting was a rule of the Qing clan. As the saying went, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Can I not cut off your head? A voice rang out. Qing Nine Leaf was furious. How dare an outsider challenge the iron rule of the sacred clan that has lasted for hundreds of years? He's too arrogant and impudent. However, he soon realized that the person who asked this question wasn't the sword-wielding outsider. Chapter 428. Qing Qishu looked at him sincerely. Can we not cut the leaves off? Qing Qishu, do you know what you're saying? Qing Jui's voice was cold, and the leaf on his forehead sank. Qing Qishu blinked and moved the tree pattern on his forehead. It doesn't have to be my skull. Why don't you take my kneecap? It's hard to tell if it's shattered, so why don't we just make do with it? The two of them had different personalities. Although they were from the same clan and wore similar clothes, one could tell the difference with a single glance. However, what caught Jiang Wang's attention was the leaf on Qing Jui's forehead and the tree pattern on Qing Qishu's forehead. He sensed a mysterious power between them. He vaguely sensed that these seemed to be the source of their extraordinary power. The cultivation method of the Qing clan seemed to be different from the cultivation system of the modern realm. Of course, whether there was a difference and what the difference was required further observation. Faced with Qing Qishu's alternative plan, Qing Jui's response was decisive. He released the arrow. The arrow was like a streak of light. Jiang Wang's eyelids twitched and his pupils dilated. Just like before, the arrow's trajectory was clearly aimed at Qing Qishu's throat. Moreover, Qing Qishu endured the pain and rolled away in an instant to avoid it. However, in the end, it still pierced Qing Qishu's heart. Qing Jui's arrow was almost invincible, but it had already been proven that it couldn't break through the circle sword. What truly made Jiang Wang nervous and incredulous was Qing Qishu, whose heart was pierced, was still alive. There was a hole in his chest, and he could see blood spurting out from it. However, Qing Qishu was still alive. He even slowly lowered his head to look at his chest, as if he had only just realized that his heart had been pierced through. He looked up at Qing Jui. It hurts. In this forest world illuminated by the Alioth star, there were many things that exceeded Jiang Wang's knowledge. The hidden snake that blends into the environment, knows how to ambush and use tactics. The trees are not afraid of fire, the strange Qing clan, and even their cultivation system that is different from Jiangwang's. And now, the 7 green trees that can still be so lively after having their hearts pierced. This was also not in the records, or the information of the Four Seas Business Alliance and the Stone Gately clan was incomplete. In short, it did not fit any of the previous situations. It'll stop hurting very soon. There was a hint of sadness in Qing Jui's eyes, but his hands did not tremble at all. They were steady and resolute. Qing Qishu looked like he was about to cry. His entire face scrunched up. It really hurts, Qiu Yezi. Although he seemed to have a tenacious vitality, the wounds on his knees and heart were still causing him great pain. Qing Nineleaf was unfazed. He knocked an arrow and drew the bowstring. Wait! Jiang Wang couldn't help but stop him again. Firstly, he did not know the grudges between the two of them. Secondly, he did not know the rules of this place. Thirdly, whether it was 7 green trees or 9 green leaves, they seemed to be very protective of the rules of their tribe. In fact, Jiang Wang didn't plan to get involved in this matter. He had a lot of questions in his mind, and he planned to ask them after they were done. But the problem was, Qing Jui's 1 or 2 arrows didn't seem to be able to kill Qing Qishu. Instead, he kept shooting arrows one after the other. It was simply torture. Seeing them follow the rules of their tribe and decide life and death, Jiang Wang really couldn't bear to watch one person torture another person to death in front of his eyes, especially since Qing Qishu didn't seem to have done anything evil. Qing Jui looked at him coldly and said bluntly, "Outsider, if you stop me from completing the hunt again, you will be the eternal enemy of the sacred tribe. I have no intention of interfering with your rules. I also respect your history. However, you don't seem to have any grudges. I sincerely suggest that you," Jiang Wang said, "can you give him a quick death?" Qing Qishu's face, which had been slightly relaxed, suddenly squeezed together again. "Hey, outsider, what's wrong with saving me? Don't you have any compassion?" he shouted. Without waiting for Jiang Wang to reply, Qing Jui said coldly, "Qing Qishu, do you really want to work with outsiders to betray the 1,000-year-old iron law of our sacred tribe? Aren't you afraid of the punishment of soul birth? Outsiders?" Qing Qishu covered his pierced chest with his hand and suddenly changed his expression to a serious one. "Qing Jui, have you ever thought about how long it has been since we last saw outsiders?" Jiang Wang noticed that his shattered knee had already stopped bleeding and was slowly recovering. What a terrifying recovery ability. It was just that this recovery time was really a bit slow. It had been a long time since Qing Qishu's knee had been shattered, but it was only now starting to recover. It must be some kind of ability limitation. Qing Jui glanced at Jiang Wang and frowned. Qing Qishu continued, "Ever since that appeared, the sacred tribe hasn't explored the outside world. At first, there were outsiders who came and exchanged information with us. Later on, their numbers gradually dwindled, and now we haven't come into contact with outsiders for a full 10 years. The elders say that they might have all gone extinct, and that we might be the only humans left in the Forest Ocean Origin realm." How could they have gone extinct? Qing Jui obviously didn't believe this. He glanced at Jiang Wang and said, "Isn't he an outsider? He is indeed not a member of our sacred tribe." Qing Qishu endured the pain and grimaced. "But he is also different from any other tribe in the Forest Ocean Origin realm. Look at his clothes, his cultivation, his strange accent. I've flipped through many records, and there isn't a single human tribe in the Forest Ocean Origin realm that behaves like this. You're saying he might be the legendary envoy of the dragon god," Qing Qishu said with certainty. Qing Jui couldn't help but look at Jiang Wang with a scrutinizing gaze. "I don't understand." When he saw that they had no intention of attacking again, Jiang Wang couldn't help but ask, "What dragon god? What is an envoy of the dragon god? What is the sacred tribe, and what is an outsider? Answer my question first." Qing Qishu looked at him and said, "You're not from the Forest Ocean Origin realm, are you?" There was no need to hide this question, and it was impossible to hide it anyway. Jiang Wang nodded. Qing Qishu asked again, "Were you guided here by some kind of power?" He had indeed been guided here by the seven-star tower's guiding light. Jiang Wang nodded. "You could say that, but—" Qing Qishu cut him off. "That's right. That is the power of our mighty dragon god. You are the envoy chosen by the dragon god." The earliest records of the dragon race in the modern era could be traced back to the Middle Ages. From the late ages until now, the dragon race had basically become a legend. In the eyes of many people, the dragon race was just a concept. Why had this dragon god suddenly appeared? And why had he suddenly become the envoy of the dragon god? Jiang Wang recognized every word that Qing Qishu said, but he couldn't understand them at all when they were strung together. They didn't have the same understanding. "The dragon god you're talking about is?" Jiang Wang probed. Qing Qishu was also confused. "The dragon god is the dragon god. The dragon god is the only true god in the world. Who else could it be? As for the outsider's identity, I will bring him back to the sacred tribe and ask the elders to make a judgment." Qing Jui struggled for a moment, but he still insisted, "It doesn't matter if he's the envoy of the dragon god or not. The rules of the hunt cannot be broken." "Are you stupid?" Rotten leak. If it weren't for the fact that his knee was still recovering, Qing Qishu would have jumped up in anger. After 1,000 years, the dragon god has already awakened and chosen an envoy to descend upon the forest ocean origin realm. Is there any need for us to continue this hunt? F***CK Yin Xiao. He immediately shut his mouth when he heard that last word. Qing Jui's expression also stiffened, as if he had touched a taboo. Chapter 429. Upon hearing this, Jiang Wang began to understand. The dragon god was the deity that Qing Qishu and Qing Jui worshipped. They even believed that this deity was the only true deity, and he himself was the envoy of the dragon god. From their words, he could deduce that the dragon god had definitely existed in the past, and that it had once summoned an envoy to the Forest Sea realm. However, he didn't know why it had gone into hibernation. This hibernation had been going on for 1,000 years. In addition, Qing Qishu and Qing Jui weren't the only sacred race in the Forest Sea origin. Perhaps their status was relatively high, or perhaps they had been protected by the dragon god, which was why they were known as the sacred race. However, for some reason, after the sacred race stopped exploring the outside world, they rarely came into contact with other humans. They even believed that all other humans had gone extinct. From this information, it could be deduced that some kind of danger existed in the Forest Sea origin. It was precisely because of this danger that the sacred race stopped exploring the outside world. It was also because of this danger that the sacred race believed that the other humans in the Forest Sea origin might go extinct. This danger was very likely related to the yin xiao that Qing Qishu had mentioned. In fact, the hunting rule passed down by the sacred race probably couldn't be separated from this danger. However, he didn't know what this yin xiao was. Was it a person, an evil god, a monster, or some other strange phenomenon? "Yin xiao, what's that?" Jiang Wang asked. Even the relatively lively Qing Qishu didn't answer. To them, this was clearly a taboo topic that they shouldn't even mention. Meanwhile, Qing Jui placed a short bow on his arm and kept his wooden arrows behind his back. There was a quiver at his waist. "Outsider, how should I address you?" He had clearly made a decision. Just call me Zhang Linchuan," Jiang Wang replied. It wasn't that he was lying for the sake of lying. Rather, he was being cautious about this unfamiliar world. Some of the yin shang techniques could be used just by using their names. The cultivation system of this Forest Sea origin seemed to be different. Perhaps there were some unimaginable methods, especially now that he knew that Zhang Linchuan was an envoy of the White Bone Path. He felt no qualms about using his name. It would be a good thing if someone cursed him. What a mediocre surname. His name is also quite ordinary. Qishu recovered a bit at this time and began to act carelessly and look down on others. "Don't say that," Qing Nineleaf objected. "No matter how mediocre a surname is, it's still capable of producing experts. No matter how great the inheritance was, there would always be weak and mediocre people. Since the emissary has been chosen by the dragon god, he is no longer inferior and possesses nobility. The conversation between the two sounded awkward no matter how one listened to it, even though the latter seemed to be praising him. It was a deep-rooted blind conceit for their own race that could not be concealed at all. Perhaps to them, all surnames that didn't contain the word Qing were mediocre. Jiang Wang didn't say a word about it. He just let them be happy. Zhang Linchuan, Qing Jui, said seriously, I now represent the sacred race to grant you the honor of entering the divine Shadowlands. If you can confirm your identity as an emissary of the dragon god, you will gain the friendship of a sacred clan. Jiang Wang said, I think I need to understand before I can make a decision. Qing Jui thought for a moment. You probably don't understand the situation here, since this is your first time in the Forest Ocean Origin. You don't understand how lucky you are to be invited to the Divine Shadowlands. That is the only safe home in the entire Forest Ocean Origin realm. What kind of dangers are there? Are they even more terrifying than the hidden serpent? Chishu crawled to his feet, his hand still clutching his chest. Even though the hidden serpent is terrifying, we sacred race warriors often go there to hunt. Outsider, you know nothing about the true dangers of the Forest Ocean Origin realm. The wound on his knee had already healed. This kind of regenerative ability was truly terrifying. Jiang Wang looked at him with a hint of a smile. If you think I'm an emissary of the dragon god, then shouldn't you treat me with more respect? Qing Jui said, It's been 1,000 years. Do miracles really exist? Actually, I don't believe that you're an emissary of the dragon god. Chishu is even more so. He's just afraid of losing his head and placing his hopes on you. As such, don't expect the mighty sacred race to treat you with respect. Chishu was exasperated. Qing Jui, am I someone who's afraid of death in your eyes? Qing Jui directly said, yes. Jiang Wang ignored Chishu's threatening gestures and asked with great interest, Then why did you invite me to the Divine Shadowlands? Qing Jui fell silent for a moment before saying, Even though I don't believe that an emissary of the dragon god still exists, I want to give myself a chance. Chishu's expression softened, and he didn't talk back for once. Jiang Wang calmly considered the pros and cons of this situation. He didn't believe a one-sided story. Then, if I'm not an emissary of the dragon god, wouldn't it be very dangerous for me to rashly enter your divine Shadowlands? He had some confidence in dealing with these two sacred race warriors. However, the entire sacred race was bound to be gathered in that divine Shadowlands. The situation was unclear, so he didn't dare to claim that he could defeat them all. It wasn't as if Inner Palace realm experts hadn't fallen into the Seven-Star Pavilion's secret realms. Ignorant to the extreme, Chishu coldly snorted. Since Qing Jui invited you in the name of the sacred race, you can share his divine shadow. What's the concept of divine shadow? Jiang Wang wasn't angered by his attitude. From their brief contact, Qing Jui was relatively calm, old-fashioned, and resolute, while Chishu was arrogant, boastful. However, they weren't evil people. Divine shadow is a gift from the dragon god to the sacred race. It's a qualification. Only with the dragon god's permission can one enter the divine Shadowlands. Qing Jui explained, I'm sharing my divine shadow with you. Once you die, I'll lose my divine shadow. Chishu added, as a member of the sacred race, the result of losing your divine shadow is death. Losing your divine shadow means death? Is it impossible to survive outside the divine Shadowlands? Jiang Wang asked. It's not impossible to survive outside the divine Shadowlands. After all, there used to be many human settlements. However, for the sacred race, losing their divine shadow means losing their strength. Qing Jui didn't finish his sentence, but his meaning was obvious. In a dangerous place like the Forest Ocean Origin realm, losing one's strength was no different from dying. The sacred race's transcendent power system was related to the divine Shadowlands. No wonder they respected the dragon god as their only true god. From the looks of it, Qing Ji was taking a huge risk in order to invite Jiang Wang to the Divine Shadowlands and verify his identity as the emissary of the Dragon God. However, he didn't know if this sacrifice was because of Qi Shu or if there was a deeper reason behind it. This was especially true when he himself wasn't sure if Jiang Wang was the emissary of the Dragon God. In fact, he even had his own doubts. This kind of risk required a lot of courage. After all, this was the kind of stupid gamble that a rational person would make while still sober. Jiang Wang opened his mouth. I still want to know. Let's talk while we walk, okay? Qing Jui suddenly looked up and interrupted him. It's going to be dark soon. We can't spend the night outside. Why? Jiang Wang asked. He didn't understand. We'll die. Simple, straightforward, and obvious. Judging from the sparse light that seeped through the forest, it was still daytime in this world. The forest ocean origin realm was always dark, but because of Qing Jui's words, it suddenly became exceptionally gloomy. It was as if many indescribable horrors were about to envelop this place during this period of time known as night. Night, what would happen? Chapter 430. How big is the Senhai origin realm? No one knows its borders. What about the Shadowed Lands? You'll know when you get there. Are the hidden snakes intelligent? Only the Snake King is intelligent in a group of snakes. You said that the sacred race hunted the hidden snakes for food. The hidden snakes are extremely poisonous. You'll die if you eat them. Qing Juri gave Jiang Wang a strange look before continuing. We hunted the hidden snakes to skin them and make them into hidden cloaks. The hidden snake's ability to conceal themselves completely depends on their hidden cloaks. Wearing these cloaks allows one to hide their tracks, just like the hidden snakes. They can greatly increase one's survivability and reduce casualties. Jiang Wang was quite tempted. He had seen the hidden snake's ability to conceal themselves before. They were truly silent and didn't give off any energy fluctuations, so it was very difficult to discover them. Then why weren't you wearing hidden cloaks when I saw you? We didn't. Jiang Wang instantly understood. It seemed that the sacred race was just bluffing when they said that they hunted the hidden snakes frequently. Even if the sacred race had hidden cloaks, they didn't have many in stock. At the very least, Qing Jui and Qing Jui hadn't received any. Have you seen other emissaries of the Dragon God before? The last emissary of the Dragon God arrived was 1,000 years ago. Then your grandfather must have seen one? Jiang Wang explained. I'm afraid that you'll mistake him for someone else. My grandfather's grandfather's grandfather might have seen one, but it's too far away for me to remember. I need to go back and flip through some books. Jiang Wang finally understood that the sacred race had a limited lifespan. Then has anyone seen one before? How will you determine if I'm an emissary of the Dragon God? Qing Jui was very cautious when faced with such a question. We have our ways. The three of them walked through the shadows cast by the giant trees. Qing Jui was probably too bored and was itching to give it a try. If you have any questions, why don't you ask me? I actually know more than Qing Jui. Has the wound on your chest healed? Qing Jui. He lowered his head and looked at the hole in his chest. It'll take a while. Are you immortal? No. Then how do you die? Qing Qishu stopped talking. Jiang Wang looked at Qing Jui on the right, paying special attention to the green leaf hanging on his eyebrows. Did you stick this leaf on? No. Jiang Wang was even more surprised. She was brought out of her mother's womb? Bestowed by the divine shade ritual. Qing Qishu couldn't take it anymore. He sped up and took a few steps forward. Let me see what's up ahead. Jiang Wang tilted his head. Why does he always add when he speaks? Is it cute? Although Qing Nine Leaf was speechless, he was a man of rules, after all. Now, that he was the one who invited you Nine Leaf here, he had to answer you Nine Leaf's question. Only those who are blessed by the Dragon God can use this mantra. Then why don't you have this catchphrase? You're not worthy? Qing Nine Leaf said nothing. He really didn't get the Dragon God's favor. He really didn't deserve it. Jiang Wang pursed his lips in pity. He had hoped to get more information, but this was all he could do now. The reason why Nine Leaf's words were so hurtful and left them speechless was actually to prevent too much information about himself from being exposed. In order to prevent himself from being questioned, he took the initiative. He didn't know if he was the dragon god's emissary or not. He didn't even know who the dragon god was. However, if the seven-star pavilion Starlight had indeed sent him to the forest ocean origin realm for some sort of summoning, then he might indeed be related to the dragon god's emissary. In other words, the seven-star pavilion's secret realm had already been related to the forest ocean origin realm since 1,000 years ago. However, the Great Swamp Tian clan had only explored the seven-star pavilion's secret realm for a few hundred years at most. The more mysterious this place was, the more satisfied Jiang Wang was. Because the more mysterious it was, the more likely he would be able to obtain the longevity treasure he needed. Qing Qishu and Qing Nine Leaf led the way. Perhaps because the sky was getting dark, they walked faster and faster. Jiang Wang followed them while trying hard to remember the route. In this boundless forest ocean, it was already very difficult to distinguish north from south. These giant trees followed one after another without any signs to speak of. Jiang Wang's choice was to sweep his gaze over the most unique trees in his field of vision and use them as beacons. Then, he would use these beacons one after another to form a route. He was practically memorizing the route with the same attitude he had when exploring the 5 prefectures sea. If any conflict occurred, he at least had to know where to run to. Only an idiot would entrust his own safety to someone else when he was unfamiliar with this place. Jiang Wang ran at an extremely fast speed. After roughly 2 hours, they arrived in front of an especially large tree. Jiang Wang was completely unfamiliar with this tree species. It was also one of a kind in this boundless forest ocean. The tree's bark was in the shape of a giant round block. It wasn't rough at all. Instead, it was very smooth and gave off an extremely sturdy feeling. The edges of the bark were also very sharp. If he had to describe it as an example, Jiang Wang felt that it was very similar to an enlarged fish scale. And from the legends, it was the same for a dragon scale. This tree was extremely tall. When he looked up, he couldn't see the end of it. Based on its circumference, this tree was at least 10 times thicker than the other giant trees in the area. The tree itself was like a city wall. As Jiang Wang stood in front of this tree, he felt as if he had returned to Linzi City. "This is divine dragonwood," Qing Jui said from the side. The tree patterns on Qing Jui's forehead glowed with a green light, which naturally merged with the divine dragonwood. He took a step forward, and the tree's trunk rippled like water as Qing Jui walked straight into the divine dragonwood. Jiang Wang could clearly sense that this divine dragonwood wasn't some kind of camouflage. It truly existed. Its ancient aura couldn't fool anyone, and it was also extremely difficult to conceal. "Let's go in. This is the divine Shadowland." Qing Jui took a step forward as he spoke. It was as if he wasn't worried that Jiang Wang wouldn't follow him in. Meanwhile, in the forest ocean origin realm, the faint light that seeped through the leaves of the forest was almost completely gone. That was about to fall. Based on the information they had received so far, the only humans in the forest ocean origin realm that they could communicate with were in the divine Shadowland. Making an enemy out of them was obviously not a wise decision. If they made an enemy out of the sacred race, it would be very difficult for them to leave the seven-star pavilion's secret realm, let alone reap any benefits. On the other hand, since many people could leave the seven-star pavilion's secret realm every year, there shouldn't be too many unsolvable situations. Most importantly, as night approached, Jiang Wang did indeed sense some kind of terrifying information. He didn't know what it was, but he instinctively didn't want to come into contact with it. Thus, the divine Shadowland was his only choice. Jiang Wang prepared himself for battle and followed closely behind as he stepped into the divine dragonwood. His vision suddenly brightened. It was as if this was another world. It was completely different from the gloomy atmosphere of the forest ocean origin realm outside. The divine Shadowland was fresh and bright. Everything before him was vast and open. Lush green grass covered the sky, and the sky was clear and bright. Small divine dragonwood trees were spread out across the plains. They all maintained a huge distance from each other, so as not to interfere with each other's light. And on each divine dragonwood, there was a huge fruit. There were 3 fruits, 2 fruits, 5 fruits, and so on. The fruits were square and had doors and windows. There were people moving around inside, and peaceful sounds could be heard. It was like a naturally formed house. Qing Jui stood under one of the divine dragonwood trees and waved at him. "It's here." Jiang Wang looked up at the sky. There was also a star hanging in the sky, the ever-changing Lianjin, also known as the Alioth star. Chapter 431. No wonder it was called the Land of Divine Shade. This tranquil and peaceful place was completely different from the gloomy and terrifying environment outside. It was as if the inside and outside of the divine dragon tree were 2 completely different worlds. In the forest ocean origin world, one's mind was constantly on edge, as if danger could descend at any moment. No matter how peaceful the surroundings were, one would still feel oppressed, tense, and gloomy. But in the land of divine shade, one couldn't help but feel relaxed. The tranquil and peaceful atmosphere instantly broadened one's mood. There was an old man leaning against a reclining chair beneath a tree, lazily fanning himself with a large leaf. There were children running and playing around happily, letting out a long string of crisp laughter. They were all wearing clothes that were made of neither hemp nor silk, and their designs were also quite simple. One of them, a round-faced little girl with a ponytail, tilted her head and sized up Jiang Wang, a stranger. Jiang Wang smiled at her, causing her to blush and run away shyly. Qing Qishu and Qing Juri were waiting in front of a giant fruit house. There was only 1 fruit on this divine dragon tree, and from Jiang Wang's understanding, it was equivalent to a residence in Linzi City. The people who lived here were most likely people with authority in the sacred race. At this point, Jiang Wang had also let down his guard a little. The reason was simple. If Qing Qishu and Qing Juri had any ill intentions towards him, they probably wouldn't allow the elderly and children of their clan to wander about in front of him and expose them to danger. He sniffed the fragrance of the earth and grass, feeling the tranquil breeze caress his face. Jiang Wang's steps were calm, and his tense state relaxed slightly. He walked closer. A vine ladder hung from the entrance of the fruit house for people to climb. Qing Qishu and Qing Jui stood at the entrance, waiting for Jiang Wang to leap up before turning around and walking inside. The fruit house was very spacious, and it wasn't dark at all. Some parts of the house were neatly embedded with intertwining threads that formed natural windows. Stepping on the floor gave him a wondrous feeling of softness and steadiness. The air within the house was flowing, and Jiang Wang could sense that this fruit house was alive. However, there was also a faint feeling of oppression that he didn't know where it came from. Qing Qishu led the way in front, while Qing Jui stayed behind to give him advice. "When we meet later, just tell the truth. Priestess is very kind. Even if you're not the dragon god's messenger, she won't hurt you. Of course, you won't be able to stay in the shadowed land if that happens." Bang! As soon as his voice fell, Qing Qishu's entire body flew out. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell heavily at Jiang Wang's feet. "Okay, I got it." Jiang Wang was halfway through nodding when he turned to look at Qing Jui with a puzzled expression. "You call that kind?" Qing Jui's expression was also very stiff. Ah, only then did Qing Qishu's screams ring out. He gritted his teeth and felt wronged. "Can't you talk nicely?" Qing Jui winked at Jiang Wang and asked him to wait outside the door. "Priest Ren may be in a bad mood today. I'll go in and have a look." The doors of the fruit house were all arched, with sky blue silk hanging down like a bead curtain. Qing Jui lifted the curtain and entered. In the time it took for them to greet each other, Jiang Wang heard an old, angry voice ring out. "Why don't you explain why you and 7 trees returned to the shadowed land together in the end? Do you really think I can't bear to send you to soul nurture?" The voice belonged to an old woman, but the pressure in her aura was also very heavy, making it difficult for people to breathe. Probably because she couldn't hide her anger, the rest of her voice couldn't be heard clearly. Jiang Wang pulled Qing Qishu up from the ground and asked, "Why did Priest Ren beat you up?" It had to be said that this brat's vitality was really tenacious. The arrow wound on his chest had already healed. He had just been beaten to the point of spitting out blood, but after shouting for a long time, he didn't seem weak at all. Instead, his voice was becoming more and more energetic. When he heard Jiang Wang's question, he glared back and flung his hand away. At this moment, Qing Jui lifted the curtain. "Zhang Linchuan, Priest Ren wants you to come in." Qing Qishu passed Jiang Wang without saying a word and rushed inside. Jiang Wang followed closely and heard an angry shout. "Kneel down." The pressure in his voice was so strong that it made Jiang Wang jump in fright. Kneeling was naturally impossible. Jiang Wang was wondering whether to turn around and run, or to first release an 8-sound flame sparrow, and then turn around and run. He saw Qing Qishu kneel down with a plop. He said with a sad face, "Great aunt, is there some misunderstanding between us? Why are you treating me like your nose is not your nose and eyes are not your eyes? You still have a face to cry? You've lost the face of the holy race." The old woman who spoke sat cross-legged on a praying mat. The material of this praying mat was the same as the clothes on Qing Qishu and the others, neither silk nor hemp. The old woman had a head full of white hair and deep wrinkles on her face. She was quite imposing when she lectured Qing Qishu, but when she saw Jiang Wang enter, most of the wrinkles on her face relaxed, and she smiled kindly. "Young man, where did you come from?" Jiang Wang wasn't used to her sharp change in style, but he answered honestly, "I was summoned by starlight to the foresty origin realm and passed through the hidden snake territory." "Starlight?" The white-haired old woman's skinny hands clenched into fists and grabbed her knees, but she quickly released them and said in a gentle voice, "Please sit." The holy race's cultivation system was different, and it was difficult to judge their strength without first fighting them. However, from her aura alone, this old woman who was revered as a priest was definitely terrifyingly powerful. Jiang Wang didn't dare to be negligent. After thanking her, he sat down on the praying mat across from her. Apart from the material of this praying mat, there was nothing special about it. However, as soon as he sat down, Jiang Wang felt his Tao essence circulate more freely, and his mind became more agile. It was truly a treasure. Such an immediate effect was truly astonishing. It seemed like Qing Qishu and the others were also wearing extraordinary clothes. The old woman sized Jiang Wang up with an amiable smile on her face. "You're a man of striking appearance. Nineleaf is right. You must be the dragon god's emissary. You've come to the forest ocean origin to save the fate of the sacred race." Qing Qishu, who was kneeling on the side, was indignant. "I was the one who said it first. Why did you beat me up without saying anything?" The old woman glanced at him with a smile on her face. Although his mouth was still moving, no sound came out. She was silenced with a single glance. Jiang Wang's heart trembled. He understood that although the old woman was teaching Qing Qishu a lesson, it was most likely a demonstration of her strength in front of him. "I'm only here in pursuit of what I'm looking for. I don't know where my destination is. The foresty origin realm might just be a passageway, or I might just be lost. I don't dare to take on the responsibility of saving anyone." Jiang Wang said seriously, "Priestess, please don't hold out too much hope." After experiencing so much, Jiang Wang wouldn't allow himself to be easily held hostage by a few words. Saving the holy race's fate? This was too big and too heavy a task. This topic was too grand and too far away. The holy race's martial artists weren't weak. This old priestess was undoubtedly an expert. How could Jiang Wang save a predicament that they couldn't solve themselves? Based on others praising him for his talented man appearance? "It's fine." The old woman was still smiling as if she didn't mind. "I'll open the altar tomorrow. At that time, we'll naturally know if you're the dragon god's emissary or not. If you are, the dragon god will guide you. If you're not, I'll send you away." Chapter 432. The Holy Tribe's priestess words were reasonable. Jiang Wang had no reason to reject the offer of spending the night in the forest ocean origin realm in the divine Shadowland. It was better than leaving and facing unknown dangers. I also hope that I can personally experience the dragon god's greatness, Jiang Wang said. Jiang Wang had lived in the modern realm where the dragon race was extinct, but he had read about dragons in all kinds of ancient texts and heard all kinds of legends about them. He was indeed very curious about the dragon god of the forest ocean origin realm. Blue Flower, the old woman said kindly. Send our esteemed guest to his room to rest. An elegant response came from the inner room. A tall woman in a long dress walked out. It was difficult to describe her appearance. She was fresh, natural, and lively. The first impression she gave off was her gentle vitality, followed by her beauty. Her aura was completely different from any beauty Jiang Wang had ever seen. Even someone as calm as Qing Jui couldn't take his eyes off her. Qing Qishu's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. He took a few steps forward on his knees and blocked the priestess' line of sight. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly as his hands continuously made gestures. Regarding the astonishing vitality of Qing Qishu, who was not afraid of being beaten, Priest Arin also had some helplessness in his eyes. He lifted his wrinkled eyelids and lifted his mouth band. Priestess, I was the one who discovered the dragon god's emissary, Qing Qishu said. So, I should have sent him to rest, not Blue Flower. Qing Qishu said anxiously. Qing Jui also chimed in. That's right. How can we trouble Saintess Qing for something like this? I can also send Zhang Linchuan to rest. I can even accompany him to rest. Qing Qishu became more and more agitated. Jiang Wang thought to himself, something like resting. You can accompany Zhang Linchuan if you have the time. I don't want to. What are you talking about? The old priestess was furious. The more you talk, the more ridiculous you become. Saintess Qing is the most favored of the dragon god's emissary. Of course, she has to communicate with him. Do you think you can understand the dragon god's will? Jiang Wang couldn't help but glance at the woman named Blue Flower after hearing the term Holy Maiden several times. What are you looking at? Qing Qishu blocked his line of sight with a whoosh, looking like an angry rooster. Qing Nineleaf's gaze was hostile as well. It seemed that the so-called Azure Saintess was the lover of their dreams. But Jiang Wang was indeed innocent. He really did not have any strange thoughts. I just thought of someone I know. Qing Qishu shouted. This method of currying favor is too old-fashioned. Qishu, don't be rude. The priest reprimanded. Humph. Before Qing Qishu turned around, he gave Jiang Wang a warning look. She couldn't really kill him. The priest could only pretend she didn't see Qing Qishu's little trick. She turned to Jiang Wang and said kindly, You've worked hard today. Please follow the saintess to rest. Come to the altar tomorrow morning. I'll open the altar to verify your identity. Qing Qishu and the others wanted to prevent Jiang Wang from interacting with Qinghua too much, but the priest had already made up her mind. They could do nothing but give Jiang Wang a few more warning looks. Qinghua's expression remained indifferent. She was neither happy nor annoyed by the jealousy between Qing Qishu and Qing Jui. Most likely, she had long since grown accustomed to this scene. She only bowed slightly to Jiang Wang and gracefully walked out. Jiang Wang shrugged and turned around to follow her out. Although he really didn't have any thoughts, he felt an inexplicable sense of satisfaction when he saw Qing Qishu and Qing Nineleaf's anxious expressions. He didn't know if they regretted inviting Jiang Wang into the land of God's shadow. Outside the land of God's shadow, one of them had touched Jiang Wang, while the other had snorted and glared at him. At this moment, a clear child's voice came from outside the fruit house. Priestess, priestess. What is it? Come up, the priest replied. Jiang Wang was walking out with Qinghua when the round-faced girl with the braids nimbly climbed into the fruit house. Her little legs thumped as she ran inside. Afraid she'd bump into him, Jiang Wang hurriedly stepped aside. The little girl, who was shouldering some kind of heavy responsibility, didn't have time to pay attention to him. She panted as she shouted, Brother Baji is back. He brought back the emissary of the dragon deity. This Baji, I don't know what he's so proud of. He didn't come, and even ordered the little girl to report. In the room, Qing Qishu grumbled unhappily. Halfway through, he suddenly reacted. Emissary of the dragon deity? Two. The little girl said. Two emissaries of the dragon deity? Qing Qishu was stunned once again. Even Xinhua couldn't help but turn a glance at Jiang Wang, her beautiful eyes filled with confusion. Were the emissaries of the dragon deity like an old hen that hatched eggs? Ahem. Even the experienced priestess couldn't understand the situation. Little Gua, did you remember correctly? Did your brother Ba Ji really say that he brought back two emissaries of the dragon deity? I don't know either. My mother told me to report first. The little girl said. Qinghua, don't leave yet, the priestess said from inside the room. Young man from foreign land, wait a moment. Understood. Qinghua stood still. Jiang Wang felt rather helpless. He was already thinking about how he was going to spend the night in the forest ocean origin realm. He didn't know what kind of dangers there were, or if he could find a safe place to rest. In reality, he wasn't as confident as Qing Qishu about whether or not he was the emissary of the dragon deity. It seemed like the real deal was about to arrive, so an imposter like him was naturally going to be kicked out. No, I have to go take a look. Qing Qishu yelled as he rushed out of the room and rushed past Jiang Wang. However, he still had time to smile brightly at Qinghua and say in a gentle voice, Qinghua, I'll be right back. The priestess helplessly added, Then you should go welcome Ba Ji. At this moment, a loud voice rang out. Priestess, my hunt went smoothly, and I've returned with great merit. There was no need for Qing Qishu to welcome him. A man with his hair tied into 8 braids leapt onto the fruit hut and strutted inside. He was holding a head in one hand and dragging a vine behind him with the other. The head in his hand had already stopped bleeding, and the face was clear and calm. This head was very unique to the Shadowed Lands, and it was obvious that it belonged to a member of the sacred race. In fact, it might even be someone they were familiar with. However, both Qing Qishu and Qinghua's reactions were very calm. This was how it should be after a hunt. Everyone here was used to this. Rather, it was Qing Qishu and Qing Jui who had returned alive that should be questioned. Upon seeing this head, Jiang Wang finally understood the true cruelty of Qing Qishu's tribe's so-called hunt. What kind of reason was there for such a cruel rule to be passed down, forcing the warriors of the tribe to kill each other in a battle of life and death? It didn't conform to the morals of the modern realm, nor did it conform to the fundamental interests of the tribe. Chapter 433. Qing Baji held the head in his left hand and pulled the vines in his right. The head was pressed against his chest. The vines were extremely long, reaching all the way to the bottom of the fruit house. His 8 braids were neatly divided into 2 sides. Qing Qishu didn't seem to get along with him. He walked over with a straight face. However, Qing Baji stepped aside and went around him. He said happily, Blue Flower, are you here to welcome me? Baji. Before Qing Ji could say anything, Qing Qishu had already turned around with a straight face and blocked his way. What do you mean by the emissary of the dragon deity? Qing Baji stuck his head out and stared at Blue Flower. Qing Qishu wasn't as tall as he was, but he stood on tiptoes and moved left and right, blocking his line of sight. Qishu, I've underestimated you. Qing Baji couldn't ignore him anymore. You went hunting with a 9-leaf cultivator, and you came back alive? Of course, Qing Qishu didn't want to delve into this topic. Let's not talk about these useless things. You said you found the emissary of the dragon deity? How could it be fake? After the hunt, I want to go hunting. TCH. He suddenly stopped and looked at Qing Qishu with disdain. Why am I telling you this? He hurriedly walked past Qing Qishu and smiled brightly at Blue Flower. Priestess is still waiting for me. I'll go in first. Blue Flower nodded. As if he had won a great victory, he walked into the room with his chest puffed out and his head held high. From beginning to end, Jiang Wang was treated like an invisible person. He could even hear Qing Qishu grinding his teeth in anger. In reality, Baji only had eyes for Qing Qishu. If it weren't for Qing Qishu squeezing in front of him, he probably wouldn't even have seen him. Go in, let's go in too. Qing Qishu shouted. Blue Flower followed him into the room. Jiang Wang intentionally walked 2 steps faster into the room where the priestess was meditating. He used his body to block the little girl's line of sight, not letting her see the head in Baji's hand. He didn't have any other thoughts. If it were here, he would also cover her eyes, not letting the child see the bloody side of this world too early. Children still didn't know much about the world. If they saw these things too early, it could easily cause a lifetime of trauma and even distort their personality. Priest Arun. As soon as Qing Baji entered the room, he walked up to the white-haired old woman and half knelt down. He raised the head in front of her with one hand. Xiang Shou, the 8 branches are complete. The white-haired old woman's expression was holy. She held the head with both hands and prayed, "May the blessings of the gods never fade." In the room, 7 green trees, 9 green leaves, and even the round-faced little girl behind Jiang Wang all prayed at the same time. May the blessings of the gods be everlasting. The priest folded his hands and held the head in his bosom. Then he said, "Foreign young man, I know you have good intentions. But to the saints, the heads that were cut off during the soul hunt weren't some bloody object, but their beauty and honor. If little Fruit can see these, she should see them too." From these words, it could be judged that the old woman priest may have a certain understanding of the outside world. Otherwise, she wouldn't have said something like, "I know you mean well." If she had always lived in the divine Shadowlands and never come into contact with the outside world, the saint's morals would have occupied her entire mind. She also wouldn't have believed that Jiang Wang had good intentions. Jiang Wang didn't agree with her, but he still moved his body slightly to the side. The world was different, and he couldn't use his own standards to measure everything. This was a principle that his father had taught him when he was very young, especially in this foreign forest ocean origin realm. However, he didn't expect a small hand to grab the corner of his clothes. The little girl with the pigtails hid behind him, unwilling to come out. She would also pray for the blessings of the gods, but when she heard the word head, the little girl was clearly afraid. It seems that no matter what kind of environment they were born in, humans would always have something in common. Jiang Wang thought to himself. The white-haired old woman paused for a moment, but didn't say anything in the end. At this moment, Baji finally noticed 9 green leaves standing in the room. His expression darkened. "Why did you and 7 green trees come back? I need an explanation." 9 green leaves clearly felt that she was in the wrong. Her voice was soft and powerless. "We found the emissary of the dragon god before the victor was decided, so we decided to stop hunting." Even 7 green trees didn't say anything. In the end, they had indeed abandoned tradition because he was afraid of pain, and 9 green leaves was soft-hearted. Although they had the emissary of the dragon god as a reason, the emissary of the dragon god was still an unconfirmed matter. Especially now that there were 3 emissaries of the dragon god, it was even more uncertain. They had stopped hunting to avoid a battle of life and death. Was this fair to Baji, who had followed tradition? Baji clenched his teeth. Is that so? The priest didn't let them continue their standoff. "Baji, we're the emissaries of the dragon god you invited." Baji tugged with his right hand, and the vine in his hand quickly retracted. This vine was too long. One end was in his hand, while the other hung outside the fruit house. Baji tugged for a while. Bam! Bam! 2 figures fell into the inner room. One of them had a medium build and was lying on his back. His hair was messy, and his eyes were vacant. The other was thin, and his face was facing the ground. His hair was tied up with a hairpin, but it was still neat. He was lying on the ground, and his appearance couldn't be seen clearly. However, they were tightly bound by the vine and couldn't move. It seemed that these 2 emissaries of the dragon god had been captured by Baji, then tied up with this vine and dragged back to the divine Shadeland. No wonder this one looked like he had nothing to live for compared to Jiang Wang's treatment. It was like heaven and earth. But what made Jiang Wang's eyes light up was that he should have seen these two people before. Their attire was typical of the Qi people. Although he didn't know the identity of the one lying on his back, he should have seen him in the Seven Stars Valley. Before the Seven Stars Valley's secret realm opened, Jiang Wang had observed all the participants and had some impression of this person. In other words, he hadn't come to the Forest Ocean Origin realm alone. Although they were competitors, he couldn't help but feel a sense of familiarity. The priest fell silent for a moment. Baji, is that how you invited the emissaries of the dragon god? Baji's expression was still stiff. They ran away as soon as they saw me. I had no choice. Apart from wrinkles, the priest also had patience. Then how did you determine that they were the emissaries of the dragon god? I was hiding in stealth clothes and happened to see them fighting the forest bear. I heard them talk about this world in guiding starlight. After connecting them to the records of my clan, I realized that they were most likely the emissaries of the dragon god. Then why did they run away as soon as they saw you? I don't know. Baji was a bit helpless. I even rushed out to save them. I was about to say something, but when I turned around, they had already run away. So you tied them up and brought them back. Then they wouldn't listen to me when I asked them to come with me. At this moment, the tightly bound Wu Qiuji was on the verge of a mental breakdown. It was such a vicious bear, and we fought it together for so long. Then you suddenly jumped out of nowhere and killed it with a javelin. You're dressed so strangely too, like a savage. How could we not be scared and run away? Chapter 434. How rude, the old priestess shouted. Quickly untie them. But from her expression, it was clear that she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Qing Baji hooked his finger, and the vine slithered back like a snake, wrapping around his arm. The man with the messy hair sat up, still in a daze. The other thinner man stood up with his hands on the ground. Although there were traces of dirt on his face, it was still clear that he was handsome. We'll talk about the hunting later. I'll give you a satisfactory answer, Baji. At this moment, Qing Jui stepped forward and said, There are 3 dragon god emissaries now. What do we do? You don't need to give me an answer. Qing Qishu gritted his teeth. It was my decision to stop the hunting. I'll satisfy Baji. The priestess didn't seem to want to interfere in this matter. She only said about the dragon god emissaries, Tomorrow, we'll open the altar and verify it. The dragon god emissary, who was still sitting on the ground, seemed to have come to his senses. He began to mutter something. Baji, you shouldn't deprive them of the right to speak, the priestess said. Qing Baji walked over and grabbed the man's chin. With 2 fingers, he hooked out a pine ball-like object and threw out the window. It was this object that had temporarily silenced them. Seeing him walk over, the other handsome man with the hairpin hurriedly did the same. He reached out and pulled out the pine ball-like object from his mouth. Can I ask you a few questions? The man sitting on the ground stared at the white-haired old woman as soon as his voice recovered. Clearly, he could tell who was the one giving orders here. The priestess' voice was very kind. Of course. What altar do you mean by opening an altar? What do you want to do? How do you want to verify it? Finally able to speak, he clearly cherished this opportunity to speak. He asked nonstop, Who are you people? Which tribe? What dragon god emissary? What kind of god is the dragon god? Aren't dragons just a legend? Are there other humans here besides you? What do I have to do to make you let them go? In ancient times, the human race lived in tribes. This person's involvement in this issue was undoubtedly treating the people here as remnants of the ancient era. With the vastness of the modern world, there were countless small worlds, mystic realms, and worlds beyond the heavens. Since ancient times, isolated from the rest of the world, it was not as if there had never been a race that had reproduced to the modern world alone. Speak slowly, don't be nervous. You won't be harmed in the dragon god's sanctuary. I am the current priest of the sacred race, and I am responsible for your safety. The old priest's voice had a soothing power. She kindly said, What are your names? Where are you from? I'm called Wu Qiuji. The man with disheveled hair stood up and said straightforwardly, I'm from a Qi of the eastern region, and I'm from the Golden Needle sect. The other person pursed his lips helplessly. Seeing that he was so honest, he could only say, "My name is Su Chi. I'm from Chi." His voice was a little rough, which didn't match his face. Qing Qishu asked blankly, "What is Chi?" He then turned to look at Jiang Wang. "Are you also from his place?" For some reason, the old priest interrupted. "The hometown of the dragon god's emissary involves the secrets of the gods. Don't ask too much." Jiang Wang could roughly understand Su Chi's feelings. This person called Wu Qiji was a little too honest. He was unfamiliar with this place, yet he directly revealed his background. He could only reply vaguely, sort of. After shaking off their anxiety, Wu Qiji and Su Chi also noticed Jiang Wang. He was dressed in good clothes and looked refreshed. There was a beauty beside him, and there was a cute little girl hiding behind him. They couldn't help but feel a little jealous. Everyone was here to participate in the Seven Stars Pavilion's mystic realm, and there wasn't much difference in their star positions. In fact, Wu Qiji was even slightly ahead. Why? However, this was not the time to be jealous. Wu Qiji looked at the old priest very seriously. "I've answered all your questions. Now it's your turn to answer mine." The old priest was also a little surprised. She probably didn't expect such a straightforward person to exist. However, she had been through a lot, so she only paused for a moment before saying, "I'm old, and my memory isn't very good. Let's do it one by one. What was the first question you asked?" "What did you mean by opening the altar?" Wu Qiji asked. "No, I don't think so." The old priest thought hard. "One more question." Wu Qiji thought for a moment before repeating, "Can I ask you a few questions?" "No." The old priest refused. Wu Qiji, Jiang Wang. Wu Qiji was a straightforward person, but he wasn't stupid. If the old priest refused to answer his question, he naturally didn't dare to draw his sword and force her to answer. There was no other choice but to shut up. "Sigh, I'm old and my mind isn't good." The old priest sighed and said, "7 trees, 9 leaves, 8 branches. The 3 of you should send the 3 candidates to rest. Tomorrow, we'll open the altar and see which one of them is the true messenger of the dragon god. We'll see which one of them is the true messenger of the dragon god. We'll see if they'll help the Holy Clan regain a new lease of life. Grant it. Let the blue flower do it," 7 trees said in a muffled voice. "I'll stay here and give 8 branches an explanation later." His expression was determined. He was the one who lost to Xiang Shou. No matter what, he couldn't let 9 leaves give an explanation for him. 8 branches scoffed. "I can't believe you came up with the idea of letting these stinky men come into contact with the blue flower. Let's wait until the dragon god's messenger is confirmed. If none of them are real, do you think you and 9 leaves can escape?" Jiang Wang and Wu Qiji could not help but glare at 8 branches. This 8 braids is quite hateful when he calls us stinky men. Wu Qiji even lowered his head and sniffed himself. He had dragged himself all the way here, and he smelled a little. The priestess waited for a moment. When she saw 7 trees and 9 leaves remain silent, she nodded. "You may leave for now, then." Then she swept her gaze across Jiang Wang, Wu Qiji, and Su Chi. "The 3 of you should rest well tonight. There's no need to worry about your safety. You need permission to enter and leave the divine Shadeland. It's very safe here." Jiang Wang understood what she was trying to say. It's very safe here. However, if you want to run, you won't be able to. Don't look for trouble. Perhaps Wu Qiji and Su Chi's experience of running away as soon as they saw 8 branches made her remind them of this. Ever since 8 branches returned to the divine Shadeland, 7 trees had been in a bad mood. After Ba Ji questioned Xiang Shou, he became even more gloomy. 8 branches sent Wu Qiji, 9 leaves sent Su Chi, and 7 trees sent Jiang Wang. They split into 3 groups and walked out. Is it a rest? Is it really just a rest? Is it a rest as I understand it? When Jiang Wang walked out of the inner room, he heard Su Chi's incessant questioning. When he was in the inner room, he tried his best not to speak as he was afraid of being noticed. Now that he felt that he was out of danger, he let loose. His voice was coarse and unpleasant to the ears. Based on the characters of the Holy Clan martial artists, 8 branches would probably beat him up. Baji would probably beat him up, and 7 trees would probably mock and ridicule him. However, 9 leaves was the one who sent him off. He merely replied, "Yes." Jiang Wang turned around. When he saw Su Qi, he sighed in relief. His eyes were brimming with tears as he said, "Oh my God, I thought I'd be eaten." A man's tone is so delicate. Jiang Wang, who was observing his competitor, immediately looked away. He could not help but shudder. Chapter 435. After leaving the priestess's fruit house, the 3 groups split up under the divine dragon tree. Jiang Wang believed that this was to isolate them from each other and prevent them from contacting each other. However, what the sacred race didn't know was that even though the 3 of them came from the same place, they were actually competitors. The 7-star pavilion's secret realms rarely appeared in the same place, but from the information he had gathered, if they wanted to leave, they had to find or resolve the reason for their descent. Of course, the reason for their descent wasn't the 7-star pavilion's guiding starlight, but rather the reason why they had appeared in the forest ocean origin realm. The 7-star pavilion's guiding starlight wasn't randomly distributed. Instead, it followed certain rules and reasons. From what he knew, the reason for their descent was probably related to the crisis the divine shadow realm was facing. The priestess had repeatedly mentioned rescue, so it was obvious that the sacred race of the forest ocean origin realm didn't have a good future ahead of them. In the 7-star pavilion's past experiences, there was no lack of rescue. Jiang Wang had to consider one thing. Of the 3 people who had appeared in the divine shadow realm, Wu Qiuji and Su Qi had teamed up against Qingbazi before they met. Whether they had known each other before entering the 7-star pavilion's secret realms, or they had joined forces under pressure in the forest ocean origin realm, there was a possibility that they had teamed up. This was undoubtedly disadvantageous to Jiang Wang in a competition between the 3 of them. When all 108 star positions were filled, there were roughly 15 people in a 7-star realm. In the forest ocean origin realm, the people who had appeared in the divine shadow realm were probably the ones closest to the core of the divine shadow realm. This could be assumed for the time being before he learned more about the forest ocean origin realm. After all, the dragon god that the sacred race worshipped was here, and there was a historical precedent of envoys being summoned here. As such, Wu Qiuji and Su Qi, who were his closest competitors, had to be on guard against them no matter how embarrassing their appearance was. What was his advantage in the forest ocean origin realm? Jiang Wang had thought about it carefully. His relationship with the sacred race could be considered amicable, and there wasn't an atmosphere of hostility. He had been invited into the divine shadow realm, while the other 2 had been tied up and dragged over. This was one of his advantages. Just a moment ago, Wu Qiuji and Su Qi had thought that Qingbazi and the others were savages and were afraid of being eaten. Jiang Wang, on the other hand, had a good relationship with the sacred race. He had to maintain his advantage. He recalled the conversational skills of the long-sleeved dancers he knew. Jiang Wang pondered and glanced at 7 green trees next to him. He began to strike up a conversation. "You don't seem to be in a good mood." Qing Qishu grunted through his nostrils. "Sigh, it's probably because of Xiang Shou." Jiang Wang sighed empathetically. Qing Qishu didn't say anything. Clearly, his thoughts had been seen through. Jiang Wang looked around and asked, "Who was the one who left in the end when he met with Qingbaji? You all seem to know each other very well." "Leave? You want to say die, don't you?" Qing Qishu had no intention of avoiding the topic. "Yes. Are you familiar with each other?" Jiang Wang was a little embarrassed, but he also felt that their attitude towards the death of Xiang Shou was a little too natural. "Baji's best friend." Qing Qishu paused. "He's also my friend." "What's his name?" "He doesn't have a name." Qing Qishu lowered his head and looked at the road. For the dead sacred race warriors, apart from their souls being able to leave, even their names must be left behind. They are left for the new warriors. In other words, if today then the name 7 green trees will also, yes. A new sacred race warrior will grow up and inherit the name 7 trees. If it were someone else, although the name would still be there, it wouldn't be you at all. It's quite a pity when I think about it. You're quite unique. Jiang Wang sighed. Qing Qishu glanced at him. Are you trying to worm your way into being friends with me? Jiang Wang laughed awkwardly. He realized that he really wasn't good at these things. He braced himself and said, You said before that you wanted to give Ba Ji an explanation. Can I ask what kind of explanation you want? What else? Soul birth, Qing Qishu said casually. The residence the sacred race had arranged for Jiang Wang seemed to be quite far away. At the very least, Qing Qishu didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. Jiang Wang asked, I've heard you guys talk about the soul birth punishment a few times. Soul birth, what is that? Soul birth, Qing Qishu said indifferently. Bury a living sacred race warrior in the ground, leaving only his head exposed. Then, make a hole in his skull and throw in a divine dragonwood seed. It has to be done before night falls. He gestured with his hands. Then, the divine dragonwood seed will use an entire night to absorb the power of the soul. Then, it will grow and mature immediately. For the person being tortured, this night will be very difficult to endure. He concluded with a relaxed tone. This is the soul birth punishment. Jiang Wang looked at the scattered divine dragon wood around him. He suddenly felt awkward. These trees, these fruit houses, who would have thought what was buried under their roots? Do I have to sleep in the fruit house too? Even though Jiang Wang was quite strong now and didn't fear ordinary people, he still found it hard to adapt when he thought about whose flesh he was going to live on. Of course, he wasn't some spoiled person. If he was in an environment like a battlefield, lying in a pile of corpses and sleeping was nothing. You don't have to sleep in the fruit house, but when you sleep, you will be invaded by night. He emphasized the word night. Invaded by night? Qing Qishu nodded, but it seemed like he didn't plan on explaining. What kind of danger is there at night? Jiang Wang was curious, but he also felt that this might be a clue to breaking out of this situation. I can't say. Perhaps Great Aunt knows, or perhaps she doesn't know. Qing Qishu pursed his lips. In short, it's very dangerous. Those who fall asleep outside the fruit house won't be able to live to the next day. If even Qing Qishu, with his tenacious vitality and terrifying recovery abilities, said this, then it really was very dangerous. No wonder the divine dragon would held such great significance to the sacred race of the land of divine shadow. At the very least, it wasn't just a house or residence. It was also no wonder there was something like soul birth. It was obviously a type of painful torture, but when it was an indispensable shelter, even a guarantee of survival in the history of the sacred race, there were bound to be many people who willingly offered it. Any race that could continue to this day inevitably had a great time. Because the long river of history was so vast, those who had never been great were bound to be drowned out long ago. Thus, Qing Qishu also looked at the divine dragon wood around him, the emotions in his eyes different. Everyone in our sacred race lives under the care of our own race. This is our home. Soul birth can be used to redeem all sins. Any clansman who chooses soul birth will be forgiven no matter what they have done. Previously, in the priestess fruit house, Qing Qishu had chosen to use soul birth to atone for his sins, but Qing Baji had refused. This heavy topic wasn't suitable for in-depth discussion, so Jiang Wang asked, May I ask, why do you call your priestess Great Aunt? Is it because you're afraid of her, or is it because you respect her? Qing Qishu said, Because the priestess really is my great aunt. She is my grandfather's little sister. Jiang Wang. However, although the priestess looked kind, her actions were very fair. As Qing Qishu's great aunt, she didn't show any favoritism in her actions. In fact, when she learned that Qing Qishu had stopped the hunt, she sent him flying while vomiting blood. The two chatted for a long time and gradually became familiar with each other. Have you seen the dragon god before? Jiang Wang asked. No. Then why do you believe in the existence of such a god? Because of the divine Shadowland, Qing Qishu said. After entering the foresty origin world's giant divine dragonwood, they arrived at the divine Shadowland. This place existed between dream and reality, and was indeed close to the places of faith recorded in some records. For example, the Buddhist sect's Western Paradise. Jiang Wang's knowledge wasn't enough to see through its essence. However, it could indeed prove the existence of a god. Just as they were talking, they arrived at Jiang Wang's residence for the night. This was also a divine dragon wood, but it stood alone in a corner. The nearest divine dragon wood was several kilometers away. Moreover, this divine dragon wood's fruit house was semicircular. It was different from all the other fruit houses they had seen along the way. Chapter 436. Qing Qishu stopped in front of the divine dragon wood. "We're here." He turned around and prepared to leave after saying this. Jiang Wang stopped him. "Aren't you going to come in and sit?" Even though it was quite awkward to look at the fruit house after learning about soul birth. However, after Qing Qishu explained the dangers, Jiang Wang quickly overcame this awkwardness. Compared to the safety of his life, this awkwardness wasn't worth mentioning. However, the most important reason was that this fruit house was so special that he couldn't just enter it without being on guard. Dragging Qing Qishu along was also a form of probing. No matter how reliable these holy clans seemed, this was still their first day meeting. One had to be on guard against others. Qing Qishu stared at Jiang Wang cautiously. "What do you want?" "I have a few questions to ask you." Jiang Wang felt quite awkward. Actually, it was more accurate and reliable to let Jiang Yin handle the danger assessment. The knowledge he had obtained from the white-boned evil god had broadened Jiang Yin's horizons. However, Jiang Wang knew that Jiang Yin was just a passerby in his body. He definitely couldn't rely on Jiang Yin, even if Jiang Yin really was his other self. After all, his other self wasn't himself. "Why are you asking so many questions? Do you still want to stay in the divine Shadowland?" Qing Qishu's expression became fierce as he spoke. "Have you taken a liking to viridescent flower?" This person's thoughts were quite jumpy, and his way of thinking was quite different from normal people. Jiang Wang helplessly said, "I really don't have any thoughts about that holy maiden of yours." "Really? Really? Impossible. After seeing such a perfect girl like viridescent flower, there's no way he wouldn't fall in love with her." Qing Qishu firmly denied this. Unless you don't like women." Qing Qishu even took a step back as he spoke. For a moment, Jiang Wang didn't even want to talk anymore. He wanted nothing more than to draw his sword and stab this guy right there and then. In the end, he suppressed his temper and said seriously, "My family, friends, and even enemies aren't here. To the Forest Ocean Origin Realm, I'm just a passerby. If I'm a dragon god's emissary, I'll only meet you once. If I'm not an envoy of the dragon god tomorrow, then my fate with the land of divine shadow will end tonight. Tell me, how could I fall in love with someone here?" Sensing Jiang Wang's seriousness, Qing Qishu pondered for a while and suddenly asked, "Where are you?" "Yes, Qi. Do you have any friends in Qi?" "Ah." Jiang Wang was stunned. This person's reaction was so slow, and his angle of thinking was so elegant. She really couldn't keep up with him. Qing Qishu said sourly, "You look like a dog, so you must have one." For a moment, Jiang Wang couldn't tell whether this was a compliment or a disparagement. He touched his nose and said vaguely, "Ah, then teach me." Qishu's eyes lit up with anticipation. "How do I make viridescent flower fall in love with me?" Jiang Wang didn't understand at all. This person's race was in danger. His friend had died in the Xiang hunt, and he himself had almost atoned for his sins through soul birth. Even without soul birth, if Jiang Wang and the others verified that he wasn't the dragon god's emissary tomorrow, then he would still participate in the Xiang hunt. With the strength he had displayed so far, he could foresee that he would still die at Qing Jui's hands. But on this dangerous night, he was thinking about one thing: how do I make viridescent flower fall in love with me? What Jiang Wang didn't understand the most was that he was asking him this question. It's a long story. Jiang Wang took a deep breath. "Let's go up and sit down before we talk." "Sure." Qing Qishu was very decisive. The semicircular fruit house hung from a branch of the divine dragon tree. There was only one fruit on this tree, and it wasn't very big. There was also a natural vine ladder, so the two of them easily climbed up. With Qing Qishu accompanying them, Jiang Wang didn't have to worry too much about the fruit house. There were 2 rooms in this fruit house, and it was very simple. Judging from the layout, the outer room should be the living room, and the inner room should be the bedroom. As soon as he entered this fruit house, Jiang Wang had a completely different feeling. When he was in the pre-square fruit house, he felt sacred and solemn, but at the same time, there was also a kind of pressure. But in this semicircular fruit house, he felt both physically and mentally comfortable. There was an almost imperceptible aura slowly nourishing his body. This is a naturally occurring divine dragon tree. It won't reject outsiders. Only now did Qing Qishu remember to introduce it. Those that bear fruits are all promoted through soul birth. The Holy Clan's heroic spirits will reject outsiders, and you won't be able to rest. It turned out that the divine dragon trees that bore fruits were all obtained through soul birth. The divine dragon tree Jiang Wang lived in was different precisely because it was naturally formed. His vigilance made him seem like a petty person gauging the heart of a gentleman. Jiang Wang felt a little ashamed, but if he were to do it again in a strange place, he wouldn't lose his vigilance. But then again, if Qing Qishu had remembered to introduce it earlier, his reaction wouldn't have been so slow, and Jiang Wang wouldn't have been so suspicious. I don't think there are many round divine dragon trees, Jiang Wang asked. In fact, since entering the land of divine shadow, he had only seen this one. If he counted Wu Qiuji and Su Qi's fruit house, there were only 3 naturally occurring divine dragon trees. Yes, it's getting harder and harder for divine dragon trees to grow naturally. Qing Qishu sighed. For a moment, he seemed worried and melancholic, but he quickly pulled himself together. Let's talk about these things later. Teach me first. I haven't had an intimate relationship with anyone yet. Jiang Wang. It seemed impossible to change the topic. He had thought that this idiot would be easily confused, but he clearly had an unusually persistent pursuit of having an intimate relationship, especially with Qinghua. Well, you need to win the favor of a girl. Jiang Wang coughed lightly and began to talk nonsense. First, you need. Second, you need. Lastly, we need. Right? Let's analyze Qinghua again. Look at her. Yes, yes. Qing Qishu listened with a serious expression and nodded repeatedly. The night passed quickly, especially when the kind, generous, and Mr. Zhang taught half the night, and the studious and diligent Qing Qishu tried hard to figure out knowledge. It felt like time flew by like an arrow. Learning had never made him this happy. He didn't sleep the whole night, but when he invited Mr. Zhang to the altar the next day, he was still full of energy and fighting spirit. On the way to the altar, he even grabbed Mr. Zhang and asked him a few knowledge points. As for Mr. Zhang himself, when he saw the uniquely styled altar of the Holy Clan, he felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders, as if he had left the sea of bitterness. He had more or less interpreted Zhao Ruqing in all aspects, and there was really nothing left to say or make up. God knew how he had concluded the 18 key points of having an intimate relationship. In front of him, 6 identical trees were arranged in a circle, and the distance between each 2 trees was exactly the same. And each tree had a branch in the middle that was entangled with each other in the center of the circle, forming a huge platform where the 6 branches extended and intertwined with each other. The texture of the intertwined branches formed a natural and mysterious pattern, giving off a mysterious and solemn aura. The deeply wrinkled priest, Ren, stood in front of the altar of the tree. His hair was as white as snow. His expression was solemn as he welcomed everyone's arrival. Chapter 437. Actually, Jiang Wang hadn't gone to sleep after Qing Qishu left. Qing Qishu had said that sleeping in the fruit house could prevent him from being invaded by the night of the forest ocean origin realm, and that the naturally formed fruit house wouldn't be rejected by the sacred race either. After passing through the hidden serpent land and arriving at the shadowed land, he was indeed exhausted and needed to rest to relieve his fatigue. However, Jiang Wang still persisted in cultivating for the second half of the night. This wasn't the first time he had come into contact with Alioth. Back in the Three Mountain region, Alioth Peak had been named after Alioth. At first, he simply thought that it was the source of Three Mountain City's calamity. Later, he discovered that the Manor Court's enforcers were stationed in Alioth. The so-called ferocious beast's nest actually had the shadow of Zhuang Ting behind it. Later on, he learned that the production of meridian unlocking pills might be related to the vicious beasts. Everything the Manor Court had done at Alioth Peak seemed to be for the greater good, but it had also destroyed the citizens of Three Mountain City. Jiang Wang's overthrow of Alioth under Miaoyu's guidance seemed to have achieved justice and saved the citizens of Three Mountain City, but the results seemed to be detrimental to the entire Zhuang kingdom. It was difficult to distinguish between good and evil. Now that he thought about it, it really did fit the unpredictable temperament of the Lianjin star. His experience at Three Mountain City was extremely important to Jiang Wang. It had greatly impacted his understanding of the world. As a result, he was naturally more cautious of the forest-ocean origin realm, which was illuminated by the Alioth star. On the tree altar, the benevolent old priestess from yesterday didn't even have a trace of a smile on her face today. She was extremely solemn. Qinghua stood to her left with her hands by her side, looking straight ahead. By the time Jiang Wang arrived with Qin Qishu, Wu Qiuji and Su Qi had arrived from the other side. Su Qi had clearly tidied himself up today. His clothes were clean and tidy, and his hair was neatly combed. This meant that he was a person who paid attention to his lifestyle. Wu Qiuji, on the other hand, was covered in dirt and bruises. He was practically dragged over by Qin Baji. Qin Baji's expression was dark. He only put him down after arriving at the tree altar and complained to Qin Qishu. This brat ran around for an entire night. For his safety, I stayed in his room the entire night. After being taught by Mr. Zhang for half a night, Qin Qishu looked at Qin Baji with a sense of superiority in terms of knowledge. It didn't matter if the outsiders ran away or not. The Dragon God emissary was also a small matter. The main point was to fight for Viridescent Flower's heart. Qin Qishu, on the other hand, was brimming with confidence. Hearing this, he only glanced at Qin Baji with disdain, not bothering to say anything more. Qin Baji was baffled by this. The altar of trees was quite a distance away from where the sacred race lived. At this time, besides the sacred race warriors, no one else had appeared. When the priest saw that everyone was present, he did not say anything. Instead, he clasped his hands together and closed his eyes to pray. After all, Su Qi had also suffered from Qin Baji's fists. He could not help but ask, "Brother Wu, I already said that I would let you go after verifying the dragon deity emissary today. Why did you run last night? Why take the beating?" Wu Qiuji said indignantly, "That old lady tricked me yesterday, so I want to trick them too. The question is, have you managed to fool them?" Su Qi probably wanted to roll his eyes, but he forced himself to close his eyes. Jiang Wang had a good impression of this kind of personality. Brother Wu is really a man of character. "Sai, let's not talk about this anymore." Wu Qiuji waved his hand and said, "We're all outsiders in this world, so we're all from the same hometown. You could just call me Qiuji." As he spoke, he wiped the blood from his nose and saw Jiang Wang's smiling face. He was a straightforward person and asked directly, "Brother Zhang, do you think it's funny when I get beaten up?" No. So my name is funny? No, it's just that I know someone called Xiuhei, and I feel that he's quite familiar. Wu Qiuji accepted this explanation. Then we're quite fated. We can get to know each other if we have a chance. Jiang Wang's expression was strange. Yes, there'll be a chance. The Golden Needle sect was one of the more famous medical sects in Qi. Of course, its strength could not be compared to top sects like East King Valley and Benevolence Hall. Qi's environment would not allow sects of that level to exist. In fact, if one traced the history of the Golden Needle sect, it was founded by the abandoned disciples of East King Valley. The founder of the Golden Needle sect was inspired by East King's 12 needles and found his own path. The Golden Needle sect's Golden Needle Dew, it was also one of the best in the cultivation world. Most of the cultivators from the Golden Needle sect had the temperament of a doctor. Among the medical cultivators, there were very few people who were as straightforward as Wu Qiuji. As for the other person called Su Qi, Jiang Wang paid more attention to him. This person hid very deeply, and his background was unknown. But Jiang Wang was sure that he had observed everyone in Seven Stars Valley at that time, and he was not the only one who did this work. He was standing next to Li Fengyao at that time. It was one thing to say that someone with Wu Qiuji's personality might not be so meticulous, but it was impossible for someone like Su Qi to not have an impression of him. The few of them chatted casually. The priest who had been silently praying suddenly chanted. The syllables were obscure and ancient, but there was a mysterious charm to them. As the chanting sounded, Jiang Wang and the others instinctively shut their mouths. They could not understand a single syllable, but a vast, solemn, and mysterious feeling rose in the altar. Their bodies and minds were solemn. It did not matter if it was the pure and wholly viridescent flower, the hot-tempered 8 branches, the slow and lively 7 trees, or the quiet 9-leaf tree. Everyone from the Holy Clan faced the altar and knelt 3 times and kowtowed 9 times. They prayed with sincerity, matching the chanting of the priest. Amidst this sacred atmosphere, a beam of light shone out from the wood grains on the altar. The light that shone out extended into a ray of light. The ray of light extended, but it had an end point in the sky, and its length varied. The ray of light formed a strange pattern that was reflected in the sky. At this moment, Jiang Wang saw that after the wood grains on the altar were magnified, they vaguely formed the shape of a throne. It stood in the air above the altar as light swirled around it. After it appeared, the ray of light on the altar receded. At the same time, the star in the sky, the star that represented Alioth, slowly but surely moved. To Jiang Wang's surprise, Alioth moved, but the light and darkness in the sky of the divine Shadowland did not change at all. Previously, he had always thought that Alioth was shining on this world. However, judging from this movement, Alioth was indeed the only star in this world's sky. However, the light and darkness in this world did not change because of Alioth. Was it because the divine Shadowland was different from the Alioth that hung in the sky of the forested ocean origin world? However, after entering the divine Shadowland, Jiang Wang had clearly observed that Alioth's position was exactly the same as the forested ocean origin world. What did this mean? Jiang Wang vaguely felt that he had stumbled upon an incredible secret. However, Alioth's movements were not affected by his will. The light in the sky did not change, and Alioth moved. The tiny speck of light in the sky gradually moved, and it seemed to move very slowly. However, to be able to see its trajectory from such a distance was enough to prove that its true speed was absolutely terrifying. At the same time, the throne in the sky above the altar began to rise and expand. The throne, formed by the light of the altar, grew larger and larger, but because it was rising higher and higher, it seemed to be shrinking in his field of vision. The speed of its rise surpassed the speed of its expansion, which created such a contradictory visual sensation. In the end, amidst the sacred and solemn prayers, Jiang Wang could vaguely see it even with his eyesight. In the distant sky, Alioth seemed to have landed on that throne. It was as if God had taken his seat. Chapter 438. This holy and magnificent scene shocked the 3 Xiozha that had entered the secret realm of Seven Star Tower. What is that? Wu Qiuji was speechless. The old woman in charge of the ritual in front of the altar had tears in her eyes. She shouted excitedly, "The dragon god has answered the throne. After 1,000 years, we will see the dragon god again. The favor of the gods will not disappear. The land of divine shadow will last forever." Blue flower, 7 tree, 8 branch, and 9 leaf all had different expressions, but they could not suppress their excitement. And in Jiang Wang's heart, raging waves were surging. It was clearly the Alioth star that had moved and intersected with the throne made of the light of the altar. Why was it the dragon god that answered the throne? What was the relationship between the dragon god and Alioth? Had the dragon god taken over Alioth and become the star? Or had Alioth manifested and given birth to the dragon god? He was even more curious about the origins of the dragon god of the land of divine shadow. Was it the true ancestor of the dragon race? Or was it a dragon that had not disappeared from the Middle Ages? Had the dragon really existed? Were the records true? If it had existed, why had the dragon disappeared? What secrets have been lost in the Middle Ages? How many secrets have been lost in the river of history? Jiang Wang's heart was filled with many questions. He wanted to ask Jiang Yin, but Jiang Yin had not responded since entering the Divine Shadowland. According to Jiang Wang's guess, the land of Divine Shadow was probably related to that mysterious dragon god, and Jiang Yin was related to the white bone god, so he had to hide in the depths of the nether candle in the land of Divine Shadow. Or maybe the land of Divine Shadow had the ability to detect the abnormalities in the body and force Jiang Yin to remain silent. But no matter the situation, Jiang Yan's silence was not a bad thing. In reality, after leaving the land of Divine Shadow, Jiang Wang would not give these questions to Jiang Yin to answer, because this was an experience that belonged to him alone. It was knowledge that he had and Jiang Yin didn't. In a situation where there was a gap in knowledge, he was not willing to share this experience, because this unique experience was one of the things he had accumulated to bridge the gap. He could foresee that he and Jiang Yin would have a long stalemate. Before Jiang Yin took the position of White Bone Path's Tao disciple and left, or before Jiang Wang expelled him, no one dared to relax, whether it was him or Jiang Yin. After the dragon god was seated, the old priest's whole momentum was high. His lethargy was swept away, and his smile was very bright. Please come to the altar. What? Are you going to sacrifice us to the heavens? Wu Qiuji asked in a daze. The old woman's smile became a little forced. It's just to verify if you've been summoned by the dragon god, and if you're the dragon god's emissaries. Qing Baji fiercely glared at him. If not for the fact that he had just seen the dragon god take his seat, and these natural devout believers were still moved, he would probably have beaten Wu Chu up again. He was already in the land of divinity and had come to the altar of trees. He had personally seen the wondrous scene of the dragon god sitting on the throne. What other choice did he have? Jiang Wang took a step forward and stood on the altar first. Su Qi followed closely behind. He had delicate features, a deep voice, and a decisive personality. Wu Qiuji hesitated for a moment, but in the end, under Qing Bazi's fierce gaze, he lowered his head and stood on the altar, looking somewhat listless. The three of them stood in a triangular formation. Once again, the old woman began to mutter an incantation. Amidst their calmness, unease, and anticipation, the so-called verification of the dragon god's emissaries began. Time flowed by. Time flowed by in a constant and unchanging manner. The dazzling spectacle that they had imagined did not appear. Everything was very calm. The wooden patterns on the altar did not change, and neither did the 6 trees that supported the altar. Only the dragon god's throne in the distant sky suddenly disappeared. What? Why is it so grand? Are we not the dragon god's emissaries in the end? Wu Qiuji grumbled. Jiang Wang also felt a little regretful. Could it be that the forest ocean origin realm's harvest did not lie in this? At this moment, the old priestess walked in front of Azure Flower, whose eyes were closed. She trembled as she leaned closer to her ear, as if she was listening to what Azure Flower was saying. Jiang Wang's heart stirred. Saintess Azure could communicate with the dragon god. Su Qi's deep voice asked this question. Is the saintess conveying the dragon god's divine decree to the priestess? Is she talking? I thought she was mute and could only say, Wu Qiuji's voice rang out. A chill ran down Su Qi's spine. Below the altar, the 7 trees, 8 branches, and 9 leaves all looked at them with murderous gazes. Jiang Wang was very curious. How did this outstanding disciple of the Golden Needle sect manage to live so peacefully until now. It might not be a problem if she pointed at these holy race warriors and cursed them, but calling the Saintess Azure a mute in front of them. A beating was unavoidable. The Saintess can only capture a vague fragment of the divine decree. She needs me to analyze it, the priestess said. The person who received the decree was different from the person who analyzed it. This was undoubtedly a way to prevent divine authority from falling into the hands of others. However, based on Azure Flower's obedience to the old priestess, this restriction was practically non-existent, Jiang Wang silently pondered. He had just left the maelstrom of Lindsay not long ago, so it was inevitable that he would think about politics. At this moment, the priestess turned to look at him and said, "The verification is complete. You are the dragon god's emissary." Azure Flower, whose eyes were closed, once again moved closer to her ear and opened her mouth. The priestess then looked at Su Qi and said, "You are also the dragon god's emissary." Azure Flower spoke again. The priestess said, "You are all emissaries of the dragon god." Wu Qiuji had already sensed Qi Shu and Baji's killing intent earlier, so he was a bit apprehensive. However, he still grumbled, "What is this? Why are they so perfunctory when it comes to me?" Jiang Wang thought to himself. It seemed that those who were guided into this world by the seven-star pavilion starlight were all so-called emissaries of the dragon god. However, he didn't know what the relationship between the dragon god, worshipped by the holy race, and the seven-star pavilion was. Did this dragon god borrow the starlight of the seven-star pavilion's secret realm to guide them? Or did the seven-star pavilion borrow the power of this dragon god? Or was it a cooperation? Just how many secrets were hidden in the forest ocean origin realm? Apart from this, what else did the dragon god convey? Jiang Wang's question went straight to the heart of the matter. The old priestess had said that once they confirmed their identities as emissaries of the dragon god, they would receive guidance. The old priestess listened attentively for a while before saying, "After resolving the predicament of the divine Shadowland, you will be able to leave this place and continue your journey. Or you can return home." Continue their journey or return home. Without a doubt, regardless of whether this dragon god was real or not, the divine edict he had passed down was undoubtedly a guide for foreign cultivators like them to leave the forest ocean origin realm. In other words, he had informed them of the path to complete the exploration of the seven-star pavilion's secret realm. So, Jiang Wang leaped off the altar and asked, "What is the predicament of the divine Shadowland?" Su Qi and Wu Qiuji also landed and waited for the priestess' answer. "This matter will have to be explained from a very long time ago," the old priestess said. At that time, just as the priestess was about to delve into her long story, Jiang Wang suddenly heard a voice. It was a cold, sharp, and frightened voice. This voice was both unfamiliar and familiar. This was the third voice that Jiang Wang had heard after entering the forest ocean origin realm. This was the third voice that came from stepping on dry branches and rustling leaves in the wind. However, this was also the first voice that belonged to a living creature. Jiang Wang had originally thought that this was just one of the unknown dangers outside the divine Shadowland. However, this voice had now traveled into the divine Shadowland. The expressions of all the sacred race warriors present changed drastically, and they became extremely nervous. This was especially true for Holy Maiden Qinghua, whose beautiful face had turned deathly pale. It was as if she had just witnessed the miracle of the dragon god's ascension in front of this tree altar. She didn't feel any sense of security at all. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.